Encrypted Truths by Donald Beavers. Dead Letter City Book 3. Chapter 1. Ghost Ship. The thump wasn't just heard. It was felt a solid, kinetic shockwave ripping through the cramped cargo hold. It resonated up from the deck plates, a jarring physical blow just as the lights blinked out. Not flickered, died. Absolute darkness slammed down, a suffocating weight pressing against my eardrums. The familiar low hum of the dust devil ceased, replaced by a silence so profound it felt like the void itself had seeped inside. Out the small viewport, only the cold, indifferent scatter of stars offered light. That and the insistent pulse of a single blue icon on the diagnostic panel near my station. Its rhythmic beat cast strange dancing shadows that seemed to writhe in the sudden blackness, the cadence eerily syncing with the frantic hammer in my chest. A diagnostic light? For what? Impact or cascading failure? Power coupling resonance? No, the silence. Panic clawed at the edges of my analysis. What in the void was that? I breathed, the whisper unnaturally loud, swallowed instantly by the tomb-like quiet. Jax? Petra's voice sliced through the silence. Sharp, focused, instantly alert. The weary slump she'd held moments before vanished. Her posture, even unseen, felt coiled, ready. Report. Silence answered. The internal comm was dead stone. Then, something scraped against the outer hull. Slow, deliberate, metal dragging on metal, moving along the port side. Not the random clatter of debris. This felt exploratory. Cold dread trickled down my spine. Mandate? I stammered, my throat constricting. Boarding party? Magnetic grapples? Mandate doesn't knock, Elias. Petra snapped back, her voice a low, tight wire of tactical assessment. I could picture her already moving in the dark, hand instinctively reaching for the pulse rifle she'd clocked earlier. And they don't grapple without hailing threats first. They'd want life support online for their people. Still, the thought tightened her voice further. Caught out here, exposed, mandate debriefing. It didn't bear thinking about. The blue icon pulsed, faster now, its cold light hypnotic, frantic. It wasn't just indicating a fault. That signal, I whispered, forcing focus past the rising fear. It's active, interacting with the ship's systems, triggering something. As if summoned, the heavy cargo bay door leading to the cockpit hissed open pneumatically. We both jumped. The manual override activated by what? Through the doorway, the cockpit was just as dark. Flight panels utterly dead, save for the same insistent blue icon now mirroring itself on multiple smaller screens, spreading like a virus. Jax stood silhouetted in the opening, a compact emergency light held low, casting harsh shadows upwards across her tense face. Her other hand held a heavy blaster pistol, steady and familiar. Company, she stated flatly, the beam momentarily sweeping over us before fixing on the outer hull direction. Something clamped onto the hull, starboard airlock, blindsided the sensors. Total power drain engines, comms, primary life support. Got emergency hydraulics and minimal grav, that's it. Her jaw was tight, a muscle working furiously. An intrusion on her ship. Malco? Petra asked, ever practical, noting the big mechanic's absence. Engine room, Jax replied grimly. Trying a manual restart. No luck so far. Feels like something's actively blocking him. Her eyes narrowed. This isn't random. The ship's being held offline. That signal, I insisted, gesturing towards the multiplying blue icons that painted the cockpit in flickering cold light. It bypassed everything, overriding command functions. Impossible, Jax spit out, though doubt flickered in her eyes. The Devil's OS is locked down hard. Physical off. The shriek of grinding metal cut her off, the unmistakable sound of the outer airlock hatch cycling open. A sound that should have needed manual overrides, codes, Power, time. A sound no one outside the crew should be able to make. Borders, Petra stated, the pulse rifle she'd retrieved already shouldered. It looked massive but steady in her grasp. Jax, alternate egress? Maintenance tunnel? Jax's jaw set, stubborn lines etching around her mouth. This is my ship. No one takes her without a fight. Petra? I called out, heart pounding like a drum against my ribs, pointing towards a stack of cargo containers near the diagnostic panel I couldn't tear my eyes from. Those crates near the panel clear crossfire on the inner door. Good thought, Elias, Petra confirmed instantly, already moving with predatory grace. Take it. Jax, flank left behind those supply pallets. Hold here. I scrambled, pulse thundering in my ears, fumbling slightly in the poor light. Jax, scowling but pragmatic, took her position. Weapons up, trained on the inner airlock door. The grinding stopped. Silence crashed back down, heavier now, expectant. They were inside the airlock chamber. Seconds stretched, each tick of the emergency systems counting down towards… what? The shadows cast by Jax's light seemed to deepen, twist. Soft footsteps, deliberate, measured. Just one person? Not the heavy, coordinated tread of a tactical team. Without warning, the inner airlock door slid open smoothly. Simultaneously, the frantic pulsing of the blue icons on every screen ceased, stabilizing into a steady, cool, watchful glow. A figure stood in the doorway. Not mandate black. Not navy gray. Not the scarred chrome of the hunter come to finish his work. The figure was slight, almost frail, clad in a form-fitting environmental suit utterly unlike any standard design. Sleek, minimalist, its dark surface embedded with strange, iridescent geometric patterns that seemed to shift and reconfigure lazily in the emergency light, flowing like liquid mercury trapped beneath obsidian. The helmet was equally unusual, its visor a smooth, utterly reflective curve that revealed nothing, melding seamlessly with the suit's collar. No bulky neck ring, no visible breathers. Alien, elegant, threatening. For several heartbeats that stretched into eternity, the figure simply stood there, surveying the cargo bay. Its posture was relaxed, seemingly unperturbed by the multiple weapons aimed directly at its center mass. Then, with deliberate slowness that screamed control, the figure raised both hands palms outward, a universal gesture. One gloved hand moved toward the helmet, fingers splaying across the seam where visor met collar. A soft hiss, barely audible. A click. The helmet began to reconfigure, components sliding and folding away with an unnatural silent fluidity, revealing the face beneath. It was a woman. Older perhaps than her slight build suggested, her face angular, sharp-featured, framed by close-cropped, startlingly silver-white hair. Her eyes, though, arrested attention. An unusual luminous amber that caught the emergency light and seemed to glow faintly from within. Stranger still was her expression, utterly calm, evaluating, and edged with something that might have been faint, detached amusement. Her gaze swept deliberately across the three of us. It lingered for a fraction of a second on the pulse rifle in Petra's hands, then flickered towards the datapad half visible in my pocket, before coming to rest, coolly, on Jax. My apologies for the dramatic entrance, she said. Her voice was surprisingly melodic, yet carried a strangely even, almost synthetic smoothness, lacking the micro-inflections of natural speech. The accent was subtle, unplaceable, nothing from the core worlds, nothing from the fringe. And for temporarily disabling your systems, a necessary precaution. She paused, the faint amusement deepening in her unsettling eyes. To ensure a private conversation. You're on my ship, Jax growled, blaster unwavering, the possessiveness raw in her tone. That's not a conversation. That's hijacking. The woman smiled faintly, a slight, precise curve of her lips. If I wanted your vessel, Captain, I assure you, I would simply have taken it. My own craft is considerably more capable. She gestured vaguely back towards the airlock. No, I'm here for something you possess that is far more valuable. Her luminous gaze shifted deliberately toward Petra, or more specifically, toward the reinforced pocket where Petra kept the stolen data chip. I'm here, she continued, the faint, unsettling smile never leaving her lips, because you carry something that has set the wolves running. Information certain powers would prefer remained buried. She let the silence stretch for a beat, letting the implication land like a physical weight. Information regarding Project Chrysalis. The name dropped into the sudden quiet of the cargo bay, the only sounds the soft hum of the emergency light and the frantic thudding of my own heart. Who are you? Petra demanded, the rifle still leveled, her voice tight with suspicion. My name is Sarai, the woman answered smoothly, her calm absolute. I represent interested parties who have been monitoring the situation originating from Port Sumner. Her eyes flickered briefly towards me. We intercepted fragments of encoded transmissions between you and your contact Dart, I believe, before they were completely scrubbed. My blood ran cold. Intercepted? Scrubbed? Those transmissions use deprecated backchannels layered with multiple encryption keys. Impossible, I blurted, the analytical part of my brain screaming denial. Those channels, the encryption, mandate cryptanalysis would need weeks. My employers, Sarai interrupted, the faint smile widening almost imperceptibly, possess certain advantages in information retrieval. A chill deeper than the void touched me at the implication. But we are wasting precious time. Mandate intercept vessels have already been dispatched to this sector. They're tracking the fading remnants of your rather conspicuous launch signature. She extended one gloved hand, palm up, in a clear, calm request. The shifting patterns on her suit seemed to pulse faintly in time with the steady blue icons now bathing the cockpit. The chrysalis data, give it to me and I can ensure it reaches those capable of acting upon it, people beyond the mandate's reach, with resources to challenge Division 14's operations directly. Jax barked a short, humorless laugh. How convenient. Show up like a ghost, disable my ship, demand the one thing these two nearly died for. Why in the void would we trust you? For all we know, you are Division 14, cleaning up loose ends. Sarai's expression didn't change, but something shifted, a subtle stiffening. A flicker not of offense, but perhaps impatience in those luminous amber eyes. If I were Division 14, she replied, her voice losing its melodic edge, cooling perceptibly. None of you would still be conscious, let alone armed and questioning my motives. The hunter would have simply executed his primary mission directive at Port Sumner, and this conversation would be unnecessary. She lowered her outstretched hand slowly, recognizing immediate compliance was unlikely. I understand your suspicion. It is prudent. But consider your position. A crippled vessel, dwindling supplies, on a predictable trajectory towards the Perseus Traverse, with mandate warships closing fast. You plan to leak the data through Mavik's fringe associates, yes? Hope it spreads? The fact she knew this new Mavik, knew our desperate, flawed plan was chilling evidence of her advantages. Those associates, Sarai continued smoothly, relentlessly, assuming they even still exist, lack the resources. They are scattered, compromised. The data might trickle out, but uselessly. The mandate would contain it, discredit you, eliminate witnesses. She gestured toward the viewport, towards the indifferent stars. My employers offer a more direct solution. The infrastructure to verify, authenticate, and distribute this information to precisely the right channels. Judicial overseers beyond mandate influence, independent media, certain internal security branches who viewed Division 14 as a threat. It sounded too perfect, too easy. And yet, the blue icons pulsed steadily, watching. You know an awful lot, Petra observed, weapon lowered fractionally, but still ready. How did you find us?
That launch signature was masked. Sarai's expression became unreadable, a brief veil dropping over her features.
My vessel's capabilities exceed standard parameters. As for finding you, she hesitated, seeming to weigh her words. Let's just say Project Chrysalis has been of interest to my employers for longer than you might imagine. We monitor key facilities, your dramatic departure, created ripples. And your employers are? I prompted, needing a name, a connection. People who value privacy. Sarai replied, deflecting smoothly. People with cause to remain outside mandate scrutiny. People who understand Chrysalis is not merely a predictive tool for dissidents. She took a deliberate step forward, hands visible, non-threatening. It is the foundation for something far more expansive. Widespread population control on a scale previously unimaginable. A system to render conventional governance obsolete, replaced by pure, mechanized behavioral management. Neutralizing individuals like yourselves, her gaze flickered to Petra, is merely the testing phase. The implications landed heavily in the renewed silence. It explained the hunter, the resources, the desperation. Not just containing a leak protecting the prototype for a new kind of tyranny. Time is critical, Sarai pressed, sensing the shift, the dawning horror. The mandate vessels will be within weapons range in under 2 hours. My own ship can extract us safely, undetected, but only if we leave immediately. And your price for this rescue? Jax asked, skepticism still coating her words. Access to the Chrysalis data, Sarai answered without hesitation. Merely access. Allow my employer's specialists to analyze and verify it. Share the burden, Captain. Before anyone could respond, the dust devil suddenly groaned back to life. Emergency lighting strips flickered on throughout the cargo bay. Instrument panels in the cockpit sparked. Reboot sequence indicators flashing green. The reassuring thrum of primary life support resumed. Sarai frowned, a flicker of genuine surprise or perhaps annoyance crossing her sharp features. She tapped a control integrated seamlessly into her wrist gauntlet, the motion swift, practiced. Curious, she murmured, eyes briefly flicking towards the engine room accessway. Your engineer is more resourceful than anticipated. She looked back up, her expression suddenly urgent, the faint amusement gone entirely. Which makes the decision more immediate. They now have power. They can track you conventionally. Decide. Now. Trust me, and come aboard my vessel. Or remain here and face the mandate interceptors with a damaged ship. The choice is yours, but it must be made now. Jax, Petra, and I exchanged glances in the restored, albeit dim, lighting. A silent, desperate communication passed between us. The brutal calculus, stay on a wounded, tracked ship with a temperamental power system, hoping to outrun the mandate wolves towards a dubious haven. Or trust this enigmatic woman, her impossible technology, and her unseen employers. Trust Sarai, who disabled their ship with contemptuous ease, yet offered escape. A knife's-edge decision, balanced precariously in the sudden, fragile hum of restored power, with only seconds left on the clock. Chapter 2. Reluctant Alliance. I need eyes on your vessel first, Jack stated, breaking the tense silence. Her voice was firm, the pilot overriding the potential victim, suspicion etched deep. I don't haul my people onto unknown hardware blind, especially not hardware that just tore mine apart. Petra shot Jax a quick sidelong glance, surprise giving way to grudging appreciation. Reasonable, buys time, tests Sarai. But leaving the devil. A sharp pang hit her unexpectedly. Even damaged, it was theirs. Known. Flawed but familiar. Her eyes stayed locked on Sarai, watching for any sign of hesitation, any subtle tightening that might betray a trap. Scanning angles, exit routes, the woman's unnervingly calm posture. Always assess. Sarai's unusual amber eyes evaluated Jax, then she gave a single decisive nod. Prudent, Captain. Accommodated. She gestured toward the airlock. My ship is docked directly to your starboard airlock. Short tether walk. Tether walk? Jax's eyebrows shot up, skepticism dripping from the words as she automatically ran a hand along the Devil's nearest bulkhead solid, scratched durasteel. Rivets visible. Real. No standard docking collar? What kind of jury-rigged ship is this? Minimal interface by design, Sarai replied, that faint, cryptic smile returning. The passage is secure, I assure you. Jax hesitated, the risks warring on her face, the worn plating of her own ship, a known quantity, this stranger's vessel an utter unknown. Go aboard, or wait here for the mandate hammer to fall. The reactivated hum of the Devil's systems felt fragile, temporary. I'll go with you, Petra interjected suddenly, pulse rifle lowered but held ready across her chest. Security, eyes on Jax, and if it was a trap, splitting the targets was basic tactics. Sarai considered Petra for a beat, then nodded again. Acceptable. We shouldn't delay. Mandate interceptors will achieve weapons lock in approximately 43 minutes. The precision was chilling. Malco? I asked Jax, the big mechanic's absence a glaring hole in our small group. On it, Jax replied tersely, moving to the reactivated internal comm panel. Her fingers flew across the controls with practiced ease. Malco, status. The mechanic's deep rumble came back, laced with static but undeniably relieved. Powers up, Cap. Bypassed whatever weird lockouts they threw at us. Never seen anything like 'em. Felt like the ship was fighting me. Who's our guest? Finding out, Jax responded cryptically. Keep her running. Might need to move fast. Got it, Cap. She's shaky but holding. Jax turned back, face set. Let's see this ship. Sarai gestured. This way. As they followed Sarai into the airlock, the restored hum of the Dust Devil surrounded me, suddenly feeling less reassuring and more like a countdown timer. The cargo bay felt vast and empty. Petra paused at the threshold, looking back, her gaze sharp. 15 minutes, she said firmly. No contact. The unspoken threat or perhaps protocol hung heavy in the air. Assume the worst. My options then? Near zero. Trapped between the mandate and whatever Sarai represented. I nodded, trying to project confidence I didn't feel, gripping the datapad in my pocket tighter. 15. They disappeared through the inner door. Alone, I paced near the viewport, staring out at the indifferent stars. What kind of ship could do this? Undetected approach, system override, yet claiming opposition to the mandate? My mind spun through possibilities: rogue black ops with bleeding-edge stealth, corporate espionage using tech generations ahead, fringe revolutionaries with access to something unthinkable. Nothing fit. Sarai herself was an anomaly, her suit, her accent, her unnatural calm. Not military, not corporate mercenary. Where did she fit? The minutes crawled. 10, 12, 14. Just as the knot in my stomach tightened into genuine fear, the airlock cycled. Petra emerged first, relief warring with a deep-seated suspicion on her face. Jax followed, and her expression wasn't just surprise, it was pure, unfiltered astonishment, quickly masked by her usual stoicism, but the flicker was undeniable. We're going, Jax announced, voice tight with something I couldn't place: wonder? Disbelief? Get your gear, essentials only, travel light. What did you see? I had to ask, stepping towards her. Jax met my eyes, a flicker of something profound and deeply unsettling in them. She ran a hand absent-mindedly over a familiar pipe junction on the Devil's wall, as if grounding herself. A ship, unlike anything. Walked the main deck, bulkheads. They don't feel right. Smooth, like polished bone, almost warm. No visible conduits, no weld lines. Tech that... She shook her head curtly. Let's just say she wasn't bluffing about capable. It can evade the mandate ships? I pressed, the immediate threat paramount. Make them look like they're standing still, Jax said flatly, her voice holding a grudging respect that unnerved me more than outright fear.
She gestured impatiently.
Grab your stuff. Malco's inbound from engineering. 5 minutes, we move. While I quickly gathered my meager possessions, the damaged datapad, spare power cell, survival scraps, Petra moved close, her voice low. Not mandate registry, not any known corporate or fringe design, she murmured, eyes scanning the familiar clutter of the cargo bay, as if seeing it for the last time. Internal architecture. It's not built like our ships, curved where we're angular, seamless joints. Systems seem integrated into the structure, not bolted onto it. And quiet. Disturbingly quiet, even under power. She shook her head slightly. You'll see. Her hand brushed the pocket holding the chrysalis chip. Whoever they are, they're playing a different game entirely. Reassuring? Or terrifying? Impossible to tell. Malco appeared, heavy toolkit slung over one massive shoulder, face grim but intrigued. He exchanged a brief, loaded glance with Jax. A silent understanding passed between them, the engineers acknowledging something fundamentally different. A nod. All set? Jax surveyed our small group. Once we board, we're committed. No turning back to the devil. Not like we have much choice, I muttered, hefting my small pack. Always a choice, Petra corrected quietly, eyes distant for a moment. Sometimes just between bad and worse. Sarai waited in the airlock, helmet sealed again, the iridescent patterns on her suit swirling slowly. 4 more environmental suits lay ready, conventional in basic form, but sleeker, lighter than standard issue. For the crossing, she explained through her helmet comm, her synthesized voice smooth. Tether is secure, but brief vacuum exposure between fields. These will protect you. We suited up quickly. The material felt cool against the skin, strangely fluid, conforming without bulk. The helmets activated automatically as they sealed, HUDs displaying readings I didn't recognize alongside standard atmospherics. Follow me precisely, Sarai instructed. Boarding process is particular. 1 at a time, maintain tether contact. She cycled the outer hatch. Instead of the terrifying hard vacuum of open space, a narrow, semi-transparent tube extended from our ship into the darkness, seemingly solidifying out of nothing, stabilized by crystalline supports that pulsed with soft internal light. It connected to a barely visible point of light on the dark hull of the Nomad, seeming almost to ripple like water. What the hell is that? Malco rumbled, peering through his visor. Temporary interface conduit, Sarai replied matter-of-factly. Fully pressurized field, but keep suit sealed as precaution. Auto-generates to accommodate visiting architecture. Auto-generates. The casual use of impossible terms sent another chill down my spine. Sarai entered gracefully, clipping onto the internal guideline. Jax followed, moving stiffly, then Malco, looking profoundly uncomfortable. Petra paused at the threshold, meeting my eyes through our visors. Ready? I swallowed hard, the metallic tang of fear coating my tongue. Once more into the unknown. The passage felt solid underfoot, yet yielded almost imperceptibly, like walking on packed moss. A subtle vibration ran through it, rhythmic, almost alive. The internal light brightened briefly, where our gloved hands touched the guide tether. Ahead, a circle of soft blue light, the entrance to Sarai's ship, grew larger. 30 seconds stretched into an eternity, each step taking us further from the battered familiarity of the Dust Devil. Then we were through, stepping onto the deck of the Nomad. My first impression, space. Not the cramped utility of the Devil, or the sterile efficiency of mandate design, but flowing openness. We stood in a circular chamber, the high domed ceiling made of the same translucent material as the conduit, offering a breathtaking, uninterrupted view of the starfield above. Walls curved organically, seamlessly meeting the floor. There were no sharp corners, only flowing lines inlaid with the same shifting geometric patterns that seemed both decorative and functional, pulsing faintly with cool light.
Soft, indirect illumination emanated from the structure itself. The air, once Sarai indicated helmet removal was safe, was fresh, startlingly clean, hinting faintly of rain-washed forests and something else.
Something metallic and unplaceable, like ozone after a lightning strike. The gravity felt infinitesimally lighter, or maybe just smoother, lacking the subtle deckplate thrum of standard grav generators. Sound seemed slightly muted, conversations carrying clearly, but without echoing. "Welcome aboard the Nomad," Sarai said, her helmet retracting silently into her collar. "Make yourselves comfortable while I initiate departure procedures." She moved towards what passed for a central control area, not a cockpit with seats and panels, but a space dominated by flowing, three-dimensional holographic fields that coalesced and responded fluidly to her precise hand gestures. No visible physical controls, no buttons, no switches. Light flowed around her fingers like liquid crystal. Jax watched intently, professional curiosity momentarily overriding suspicion, her eyes tracking every impossible interface. Malco just looked profoundly out of place, standing awkwardly near the entry point, dwarfed by the alien architecture. Petra stood beside me, guarded, alert, absorbing every detail. "Not mandate tech," I whispered unnecessarily, stating the obvious. "Not even an evolution of it. This is something else entirely." "Pre-collapse," Petra suggested quietly, her voice tight with speculation. "Or developed completely outside known space? Could anything truly exist outside the mandate's reach, this advanced?" "Preparing for departure," Sarai announced, her hands moving through intricate patterns in the light displays. "Boarding conduit retracting, disengaging magnetic clamps, underway momentarily." Through the domed ceiling, the familiar scarred hull of the Dust Devil began to shift, dwindling rapidly as the Nomad smoothly accelerated without any discernible inertia. "My ship?" Jax demanded, alarm sharp in her voice, stepping towards Sarai. "Programmed for automated course correction and random subspace jumps after 7 hours," Sarai replied smoothly, not turning from the controls. "Navigational data scrambled. By the time mandate forces realize it's empty, we'll be long gone. It confuses pursuit. You just set my ship adrift?" Jax's expression darkened with fury. "A temporary measure, Captain," Sarai assured her coolly. "The programming disengages post-evasion. Your vessel remains intact, elsewhere. Consider it impounded, not stolen." Before Jax could retort, Sarai's holographic displays flared crimson. Alarms chimed soft, melodic, yet somehow more alarming than harsh klaxons. Sarai frowned, fingers flying across the light patterns with increased speed. "Mandate vessels approaching faster than anticipated," she announced, her tone shifting instantly to crisp efficiency. 3 Vigilance-class light corvettes, pursuit configuration. They must have triangulated our departure signature more rapidly than projected, altering course to intercept. "Can we outrun them?" Petra asked, moving closer to the display, instinctively assessing the threat vectors. "Conventional velocity? Easily," Sarai replied, her focus locked on the swirling patterns of light. "But they tagged our energy signature during the disengagement. Standard FTL escape leaves a traceable wake, and their scanners are surprisingly sophisticated." Her hands paused over a complex, pulsating spiral of light. "I had hoped to avoid this. The energy expenditure is significant." She turned then, facing us, her expression serious. "I need to execute an emergency translation. It renders us completely undetectable, but the process is intense. Secure yourselves." She gestured towards recessed areas along the curved walls. As she did, sections of the seating smoothly reconfigured themselves, flowing outward to form secure acceleration couches, lined with a strange woven fabric that seemed to shimmer faintly. "Translation?" Jax repeated. Pilot's interest peaked despite the danger. "What drive system uses that terminology?" Not one currently listed in the mandate registry, Sarai replied cryptically. Please, secure yourselves, quickly. Her tone brokered no argument. We moved rapidly to the offered couches. As I sank into one, the woven fabric restraints adjusted snugly around me automatically, feeling strangely warm, almost alive. Sarai returned to the controls, placing her hands into the heart of a rotating holographic pattern. The light flowed around her fingers, coalescing, intensifying. Translation initiating, she announced, her voice calm but resonant. 3, 2, 1. The stars visible through the domed ceiling didn't streak or blur. They stretched, elongated impossibly, becoming lines of light, twisted, spiraling inward like water down a drain. Colors bled across the spectrum, brilliant, vibrant hues I couldn't name, flashing painfully bright. A profound subsonic vibration resonated through the very structure of the ship, felt deep in the bones, not heard with the ears. The air thickened, pressure building abruptly, reality itself seeming to fold inward, buckling under an unimaginable strain. Then transition, a moment of crystalline stillness. Utter silence. Awareness fractured, splintering for an infinitesimal moment into infinite possibilities. I saw brief flashing glimpses. Data streams collapsing into static, Petra falling at Port Sumner, Jax piloting a burning ship, Malco lost in the engine room. Other selves, other outcomes, branching into endless might-have-beens. Microseconds, centuries, impossible to gauge. Reality snapped back into place with jarring abruptness. Different stars overhead, unfamiliar constellations, denser, brighter. The pressure equalized instantly. The deep vibration faded, leaving only a faint tingling in my limbs and the taste of ozone or copper in my mouth. My stomach clenched with nausea. Translation complete, Sarai announced, her voice only slightly strained despite her composure. She stepped back from the controls, which now pulsed with a steady, calm blue light. Mandate pursuit is no longer within sensor range. Current location, galactic coordinates 87 Sigma 23, approximately 6.2 light-years from previous position. 6.2 light-years? Instantly? Jax echoed, pushing herself up from the couch, looking genuinely stunned, pilot's ingrained understanding of physics warring with the evidence. Mandate jump drives need hours of calculation and spool up for that kind of displacement. Minimum? As I said, Captain, Sarai replied, stepping away from the controls, that faint, enigmatic smile returning as the couch restraints retracted smoothly. My vessel has certain advantages. As I rose, feeling distinctly unsteady, Petra caught my glance. She looked pale, swallowing hard, and shook her head slightly. Not now. Whatever we had just experienced, it wasn't standard FTL. Introductions are properly in order, I believe, Sarai continued, moving toward a central seating area that smoothly reconfigured itself from the couches we'd just vacated. We have some time before the next translation is necessary. I imagine you have questions. That, I thought, cautiously taking a seat on the strangely yielding material, was possibly the understatement of the century. Chapter 3. Revelations in Transit. The seating in the central gathering area shifted subtly beneath us, conforming to our bodies with a responsiveness that felt more organic than mechanical. It was unsettling, a constant reminder of this ship's strangeness, making me wonder just how deeply it monitored its occupants. I glanced at Petra. Her face was composed, a mask of neutral assessment, but her eyes hadn't stopped moving since we boarded, cataloging every unusual detail of the flowing architecture, every flicker of the integrated displays. The translation, that brief, sickening glimpse of fractured realities, faces I thought long buried flashing in the periphery, had shaken us all more than we let on. The metallic taste lingered. Sarai remained standing before us, posture relaxed yet conveying an utter, unnerving alertness. I promised explanations, she began, her luminous amber eyes sweeping over us, seeming to assess our reactions even before she spoke. Though some aspects of my mission and the nature of my employers must remain sensitive for operational security. Your mission? Petra echoed, picking up on the word instantly, her voice sharp and focused. That sounds more structured than just opposing a rogue mandate division. Indeed, Sarai acknowledged with a slight inclination of her head, a gesture perhaps too perfectly measured. Opposing Project Chrysalis, her voice tightened almost imperceptibly, a flicker of something that might have been personal animosity, is one complex facet of a larger agenda. My employers strive to monitor mandate activities, particularly experimental technologies that push beyond established ethical boundaries. And these employers are? Jax pressed, blunt as ever, leaning forward slightly, clearly tired of dancing around the point. The smooth, yielding couch seemed incongruous beneath her worn, pragmatic frame. Sarai offered that faint, precise smile again. We refer to ourselves collectively as the Concordat, a fractional hesitation before the term, as if translating a concept. A consortium of like-minded individuals, scientists, ethicists, specialists such as myself. Many founders were once integral parts of mandate research divisions before the current regime consolidated power and narrowed its vision. She paused, her gaze distant for a moment. They chose a different path, taking their knowledge and certain assets with them. The word assets hung in the air, implying more than just data. So, a science resistance? I asked, skepticism coating my words. Operating in secret? With ships centuries ahead of anything listed in Jane's Starship registry? Not centuries, Sarai corrected gently, though a fleeting shadow, perhaps frustration at the simplification, crossed her features. Merely decades ahead in specific fields. The mandate claims technological primacy, but that's a carefully engineered perception. Their innovation curve flattened years ago, prioritizing ubiquitous control over genuine progress. She gestured vaguely around the flowing interior of the Nomad. The Concordat simply pursued theoretical pathways the mandate abandoned or deemed unprofitable, or perhaps uncontrollable. Malco, silent until now, shifted his considerable weight, making the adaptive couch sigh faintly. The translation drive, he rumbled, engineer's curiosity finally overriding innate caution. That wasn't standard spacetime folding. The quantum tunneling resonance. It didn't match any known spacetime metric. Where's the energy coming from? The containment signature was unlike anything I've ever logged. Sarai turned to him, a flicker of genuine appreciation in her unsettling gaze. A keen observation, engineer. No, we call it phase translation. A controlled method of shifting partially outside conventional spacetime dimensions, then reintegrating at a new spatial coordinate. Theoretically impossible, I objected immediately, the physics screaming contradiction. The negative energy density requirements, the stabilization, the Casimir effect limits alone make that untenable without exotic matter stabilization, far beyond known practical physics. Prohibitive using conventional power sources and metrics, yes, Sarai finished smoothly, nodding as if indulging a bright student. The Nomad employs a different approach to energy generation and containment. She left it at that, a subtle but clear boundary drawn around her vessel's core secrets. The scale was dizzying, a parallel technological infrastructure, operating in complete secrecy. Yet here we sat, proof of its existence, still vibrating faintly with the aftershocks of a journey that defied known physical laws. Back to Chrysalis, Petra redirected, her focus unwavering, pulling the conversation back from theoretical physics to the immediate threat. You said it's more than just identifying dissidents. What exactly is Division 14 building? Sarai's expression grew somber, the faint traces of amusement evaporating completely, replaced by a cold gravity. They are building a system designed to manage entire populations through predictive behavioral modification. She paused, letting the weight of the words land in the quiet cabin. The volatiles individuals like yourselves deemed disruptive. They are merely the initial obvious targets. The true framework is designed to influence far subtler behaviors across the general populace. My hand tightened instinctively on the edge of the couch. Influence how? I asked, a cold dread settling in my gut, imagining algorithms shaping lives on a mass scale. Through precisely calibrated information control fed directly into personal devices, Sarai said, her voice hardening, sentences becoming shorter, sharper, more clinical. Targeted service disruptions creating artificial scarcity or inconvenience. Engineered social pressures amplified through networks, cultivated anxieties and desires. 1,000 tiny calculated nudges guiding collective behavior along predetermined paths deemed optimal by the system. Her gaze met Petra's, holding it. Imagine a society where significant resistance never coalesces because potential dissenters are subtly redirected or neutralized before they even consciously recognize their own dissent. Where consumption patterns, career choices, even personal relationships are quietly managed to maximize compliance and predictability. Petra paled visibly, her knuckles white where she gripped the edge of her seat. I saw her swallow hard, perhaps picturing someone she knew, family, friends unknowingly steered like puppets. Jax let out a low, disgusted sound, her cynicism hardening into something colder, bleak anger flickering in her eyes at the thought of yet another layer of pervasive control. Monstrous, Petra whispered, the word barely audible. Her hand unconsciously moved to the pocket holding the chip, as if confirming its reality. Even with the mandate's computing power, I started, my mind racing through processing limitations, data storage requirements. Then it hit me, connecting dots from fragmented intel reports I dug up months ago. The facility expansions, I murmured, pieces clicking into place with sickening clarity. Sector Gamma, the missing Orion Belt heavy element shipments Petra flagged. They weren't building new weapons platforms. They were building massive dedicated computing arrays specifically for Chrysalis. Precisely, Sarai confirmed grimly. Diverting staggering resources off-book for over a decade. Port Sumner was just one operational node, a testing ground for refining the core algorithms on a live population. She turned back to Petra. The data you carry potentially holds the architectural framework for the entire system. With it, we can expose not just what they have done, but the full horrifying scope of what they plan to implement. And after we share this data with your concordate? Petra asked carefully, her voice regaining some of its steadiness. The strategist assessing the transaction. Authentication against our existing intelligence, Sarai replied promptly. Comprehensive analysis, packaging with corroborating evidence defector testimonies, financial tracking, technical specifications, then rapid distribution. She gestured to a holographic star chart that shimmered into existence nearby, showing complex network connections. To receptive ears on fringe worlds, to certain oversight bodies within the consortium judicial system, and crucially, to key reformist elements within the mandate structure itself who view Division 14's unchecked power as a threat to overall stability. Distribution isn't enough, Jax interjected gruffly, pushing herself upright slightly. Mandate propaganda machine will bury it in days. Discredit you, discredit us. Label it fringe propaganda or corporate sabotage. Which is why timing, corroboration, and the method of dissemination are critical, Sarai acknowledged, activating a projected route on the star chart. We possess secure channels, pre-established contacts, methods to bypass standard mandate information filters. Your data serves as the keystone, verifying and unlocking the significance of intelligence we've gathered over years. She indicated the route displayed. Our immediate destination, a secure Concordat outpost in the Carina Nebula region. Estimated arrival in approximately 72 standard hours, after several more phase translations to ensure complete evasion. The route snaked through sparsely populated sectors, far from standard mandate patrol lanes. What happens to us afterward? Petra asked, voicing the unspoken question that hung heavy between us. You don't exactly seem to welcome outside observers, I imagine. Sarai's expression softened slightly. A calculated shift, perhaps. You will have choices. Remain with the Concordat. Your skills, particularly Miss Juno's and Mr. Strand's, are demonstrably valuable. Or, should you desire it, relocation beyond the mandate's effective reach. New identities, resources to establish new lives. And if we decline both? Petra pressed. Ever the strategist, probing the edges of the cage, testing for hidden locks. Then we facilitate your departure at a neutral location of your choosing, with sufficient resources for your journey. Sarai replied evenly, her gaze steady. The Concordat does not hold individuals against their will, Miss Juno. To do so would make us no better than those we oppose. The use of Petra's surname, spoken so calmly, sent a fresh chill through me. They knew exactly who we were. Mavik's network, or something deeper? How do you know our names? I asked directly, needing to understand the depth of their surveillance. The Concordat maintains extensive intelligence networks, including monitoring certain mandate internal security and personnel systems. Sarai met my gaze without flinching. Port Sumner's security breach triggered multiple high-level alerts. Your own prior inquiries into Sector Gamma left a distinct data trail, Mr. Strand. Miss Juno's exemplary and abruptly curtailed IPU service record was notable. She turned her attention to Jax. And Captain Jax Meridian, your reputation precedes you in certain fringe operation circles. Your vessel's transponder signature has been flagged as a potential asset for independent logistics for some time. Jax's eyes narrowed dangerously. You've been monitoring me? My ship? Cataloging potential independent assets. Sarai corrected smoothly, precisely. Operators possessing your particular skill set and ethical flexibility? Operating outside conventional frameworks are rare and potentially valuable? Ethical flexibility, Jax repeated flatly, spitting the words out like something foul. Smuggler. A logistical specialist, Sarai countered, the ghost of that unnerving smile returning. Operating efficiently outside traditional constraints. Semantic, Captain. A subtle, melodic chime sounded from the control area. Sarai glanced towards it. Approaching calculated coordinates for the second translation. It would be wise to secure yourselves again. This transit may feel somewhat rougher due to local subspace topography. As we moved reluctantly back to the acceleration couches, I found myself beside Petra again. That translation, I murmured, keeping my voice low. Did you see anything? Feel anything specific? Petra hesitated, looking away briefly towards the flowing starlight on the ceiling display. Possibilities, she whispered, barely audible over the rising hum of the drive. Versions of myself, different choices made at critical junctions, old regrets, paths not taken. She shook her head, disturbed. It felt like seeing through walls into other lives, not normal jump disorientation. We settled into the couches, the strange warm restraints embracing us snugly. Sarai was already back at the controls, her hands moving fluidly through the coalescing patterns of light. The now familiar deep vibration began, stronger this time, resonating unsettlingly in my teeth. As the stars outside began their impossible, sickening stretching and twisting, I closed my eyes, bracing for another plunge into that disorienting space between realities. Whatever the Concordat truly was, whatever their ultimate aims hidden behind Sarai's careful words and advanced technology, we were irrevocably tied to their path now. The time for doubt had passed. The choice, forced or not, had been made. Away from the mandate's code-known grip towards something unknown, potentially more dangerous, but undeniably different. Something beyond. Chapter 4. The Outpost. The final translation deposited the nomad not into open space, but into a breathtaking nebula whose swirling clouds of emerald and violet painted the domed ceiling viewport. We decelerated with impossible smoothness, gliding into a dense cluster of stellar debris, shattered planetoids, and metallic wreckage that Sarai explained masked the outpost's location from all but the most sophisticated scans. "Impressive passive stealth," Petra observed, watching the external sensor displays as we navigated the treacherous field towards something utterly invisible to standard detection methods. "Primarily passive systems," Sarai replied, a hint of what might have been pride touching her usually composed voice. "The outpost structure absorbs or refracts most scanning wavelengths. Its minimal power signature is designed to mimic natural energy fluctuations within the nebula." The outpost emerged from the debris field like a revelation. Not the angular, utilitarian shapes of mandate stations, nor even the sleek, unsettling curves of the Nomad. This structure spiraled outward like a colossal nautilus shell, its surfaces shimmering, shifting between translucent and opaque depending on the light angle. It looked less constructed and more grown. As we approached, a section of the spiraling hull flowed open seamlessly, not like a docking bay door retracting, but like tissue parting, forming a perfect berth for the Nomad. "Welcome to Outpost Karina," Sarai announced as the ship settled gently into place and magnetic clamps engaged with barely a tremor. "We will be met by the facility director, Dr. Lian Voss. She has been keenly anticipating the arrival of the Chrysalis Delta." "Is she Concordat leadership?" Petra asked immediately, mapping the hierarchy, assessing the power structure. "A senior researcher," Sarai explained carefully. "Highly respected. Formerly attached to the Mandate's Advanced Social Dynamics Division. She chose to leave 15 years ago. Her foundational understanding of chrysalis-like behavioral frameworks is unparalleled within the Concordat." Something in Sarai's tone suggested Voss held significant influence regardless of formal title. The connection passage, another shimmering field extending from the Nomad, opened into the outpost proper. The organic architecture expanded onto a larger scale here. High, curving ceilings vaulted overhead, lit by soft, indirect light that seemed to emanate from the walls themselves. The floor flowed seamlessly into the walls, creating a sense of continuous, calm space. It wasn't sterile exactly, but quiet, focused. Personnel moved through the wide corridors, men and women in simple, functional tunics of muted blues and grays. They nodded politely to Sarai, but their expressions were absorbed, preoccupied, radiating an intense, quiet dedication. The air was cool, clean, with the faint scent of ozone and growing algae from internal biosystems. Comforting, yet subtly alienating in its serene, focused intensity. We were met in a central atrium, a vast open space where multiple corridors converged beneath a translucent ceiling, showing the swirling nebula above by a tall woman. She had close-cropped silver hair, framing an intelligent face with sharp cheekbones and dark penetrating eyes that softened potentially severe features. She wore a simple, elegantly cut blue tunic and trousers, devoid of rank or insignia. Authority radiated from her, nonetheless calm, assessed, confident. "Sarai, welcome back," she greeted, her voice warm but carrying an undercurrent of clear command. "Your updates were illuminating." Her gaze swept over us, openly interested, assessing each of us in turn, Jax's defiant posture, Malco's wary bulk, my own nervous energy, settling finally on Petra. "And these must be our guests. I am Lian Voss. Welcome to Outpost Karina." "Dr. Voss," Sarai acknowledged formally. "As anticipated, the primary chrysalis data module is intact. Miss Juno carries it." Dr. Voss turned her full attention to Petra, her focus sharpening, the polite warmth receding slightly to reveal the keen, analytical mind beneath. "Your actions, Miss Juno, retrieving this data under such extreme duress, have been incredibly significant. We've been attempting to document the true extent of Division 14's agenda for years, operating largely on theoretical models and fragmented intelligence. It came at a high price, Petra replied evenly, meeting Voss's gaze, trying to gauge the woman behind the title. Remembering Mavic, the cost of misplaced trust. Lives were lost. Others are still at profound risk. Those sacrifices will not be in vain, Dr. Voss assured her, her tone conveying sincere conviction, yet perhaps lacking a deeper resonance of shared loss. She gestured toward an adjacent chamber, its entrance parting silently as she approached. I have prepared the primary analysis laboratory. If you're ready, we can begin the data extraction immediately. The sooner we verify its contents and architecture, the sooner we can formulate and enact effective countermeasures. The emphasis was clearly on action, on results. Petra hesitated for a fraction of a second, glancing at me, then Jax. This is it. The point of no return. She gave a curt nod. I need to be present during the extraction and analysis. Of course, Dr. Voss agreed readily, her expression open, conveying transparency. Essential for maintaining trust and ensuring data integrity. She looked towards Jax and Malco. Captain Meridian, Engineer Kane, perhaps our technical facilities or ship diagnostics would be of interest while we work? I'll stay with them, Jax replied firmly, folding her arms, suspicions still evident. Malco grunted agreement beside her. Dr. Voss nodded acceptance without missing a beat. As you wish. Then please, follow me. The analysis lab maintained the Outpost's organic design, but the walls pulsed faintly with embedded processing nodes, and specialized equipment seemed to flow organically from the structures. Holographic interfaces emerged from walls and floor consoles as Voss gestured. We utilize a non-invasive quantum resonance extraction method, Dr. Voss explained, indicating a recessed basin filled with a shimmering mercurial substance. Simply place the data module here. The medium interfaces at the quantum entanglement level, allowing for a complete read copy without altering the original module's physical or data state. Petra studied the setup intently, then carefully removed the battered chrysalis chip from its shielded pocket. It looked archaic, brutal, nestled in her palm against the fluid advanced tech of the lab. She paused, her knuckles white for a second, perhaps thinking of Mavic, perhaps of the lives lost to get this far, then purposefully placed it into the silvery medium. Instantly, the substance flowed around the chip, enveloping it. Holographic displays bloomed around the chamber, cascading with raw data, dense streams of text, complex schematics, shifting figures, abstract algorithmic patterns rendered in 3 dimensions. Dr. Voss moved among the swirling displays, her expression shifting rapidly from focused intensity to something bordering on scientific reverence, then hardening into clinical assessment. Extraordinary, she murmured, zooming in on a dense cluster depicting predictive behavioral algorithms. The core architecture, significantly more advanced than our projections anticipated. These second-order behavioral models. She pointed to a rotating construct resembling a neural network overlaid onto a map of interconnected nodes. This appears to be a dynamic targeting projection for an entire colonial sector, not just identifying potential individual threats, mapping nascent resistance networks before they can even form. Consistent with analysis of the Port Sumner data files, I commented, recognizing core patterns. It's preemptive social engineering, automated. Precisely, Dr. Voss agreed, turning to me with brief, sharp appreciation before her attention snapped back to the data streams. It identifies not just active resistors, but those statistically likely to resist under certain generated conditions. Then it models scenarios to create those conditions, tests responses in simulated populations, refines. Her voice trailed off, then hardened slightly as she gestured to another stream personnel files, thousands upon thousands tagged with complex metrics and threat ratings. And these are the volatiles already contained or neutralized based on early iterations. People like yourselves. Some isolated, some discredited, others permanently removed from the equation. The scale was staggering. Tens of thousands, perhaps hundreds of thousands globally, already categorized, managed, or eliminated by this inhuman system. And Port Sumner was just one node. The memory of the resources diverted, the scale of the computing arrays needed. It solidified into a chilling, concrete picture of methodical, planetary-scale oppression. But there's something else, Dr. Voss said suddenly, her tone shifting, sharpening with alarm. A classification I haven't encountered before. A separate, parallel development track labeled Nexus Integration. A new display dominated the center of the lab, showing a recursive system feedback loops between predictive algorithms and apparent implementation protocols. It looked less like prediction and more like active intervention. Nexus integration? Petra questioned sharply, taking a step closer. What does that mean? Based on these schema, it suggests capabilities beyond passive prediction and external manipulation, Dr. Voss replied, her expression deeply troubled, the earlier scientific excitement replaced by undisguised horror. It indicates direct intervention, potentially even direct neural influence over targeted populations? Mind control? Jax interrupted from near the doorway, her voice thick with disbelief. Not crude telepathy or overt overrides, Dr. Voss clarified quickly, her eyes scanning the data furiously. Subtler, likely involving neural implants disguised as ubiquitous health monitors or communicators. Perhaps targeted biochemical compounds delivered via atmospheric systems or water supplies. Individually minimal effects, perhaps undetectable, but collectively orchestrated by the chrysalis system, potentially shifting emotional responses, cognitive biases, even core beliefs across entire populations without their awareness. She finally looked up, meeting my eyes, then Petra's, making them physiologically less capable of recognizing systemic manipulation, engineering compliance at the neural level. A horrifying refinement of the behavioral control Sarai had described. Not just nudging choices, but altering the very capacity to choose freely. A perfectly coordinated system operating below the threshold of conscious awareness. This is still theoretical, right? I asked, pointing to developmental markers and simulation tags scattered through the Nexus data. Testing phases. Close, Dr. Voss replied gravely, bringing up another series of files, logistics reports, shipping manifests, deployment schedules. According to these timelines, initial field testing of discrete Nexus components is already underway in selected peripheral colonies. Limited controlled rollouts. Petra looked up sharply at that, her breath catching audibly. Which colonies? Her voice was suddenly tight, strained. Dr. Voss directed another stream of data onto a side display, a list of settlements. Mostly minor outposts, resource extraction hubs, populations easily monitored and controlled. But one name leaped out, stark against the others. Haverton Ridge, Petra read aloud, her voice cracking on the second word. Tau Ceti system, primary population center approx. 200,000, classified as prime food production hub. Her hand flew to her mouth, eyes wide with sudden dawning horror. A specific memory flashed Torin, younger, laughing, covered in mud after trying to help on their parents' small orbital farm, waving goodbye years ago as he left for the promise of work on a developing ag world, Haverton. My brother settled there. Torin runs a hydroponics operation. I haven't had contact in years. The words trailed off, thick with unspoken fear and regret. Dr. Voss's professional demeanor softened, replaced by genuine concern and perhaps pity. She quickly cross-referenced the name against the Nexus deployment data. According to this, she said quietly, confirming the terrible link, Haverton Ridge is designated a Nexus integration beta site. Primary focus listed as Environmental Cognitive Modulation Study for Enhanced Agricultural Worker Productivity and Compliance. Her eyes met Petra's, conveying the unspoken horror of the euphemism. Likely testing behavioral compounds delivered via water reclamation or atmospheric processing systems. Silence descended, thick and suffocating, broken only by the soft hum of the lab equipment displaying the architecture of impending tyranny. Then we move. Now. Sarai's voice cut through the silence from near the lab entrance, where she'd been observing quietly. Her usual calm was replaced by a sharp, decisive urgency. This changes the parameters. Not just data dissemination. Direct intervention is required. Dr. Voss nodded grim agreement, already turning back to the data streams, her analytical focus returning like a shield. I will prepare the complete analysis package for immediate transmission to Concordate High Command. With your permission, Miss Juno, we'll begin copying the core data immediately. We can coordinate a multi-front response, public disclosure, legal challenges, and targeted extraction operations at the identified test sites. Petra's face hardened, pain momentarily eclipsed by a fierce, burning resolve. Haverton Ridge, that's priority 1. If Doran's there, if he's been exposed to this... The sentence hung unfinished. The what if, too terrible to voice. He likely has been, Dr. Voss said gently but firmly. But we have resources we can mobilize within days. Specialized extraction teams, medical personnel trained specifically to counter neural influence compounds based on our theoretical models. I am going with that team, Petra stated. Not a request, but a flat declaration. Her voice was absolute, leaving no room for argument. Dr. Voss and Sarai exchanged a brief, almost imperceptible glance. Calculating, perhaps? Assessing risks? That can be arranged, Sarai said finally, her tone neutral once more. Once the primary data analysis is complete and transmission to command is initiated, we will discuss deployment logistics. The lab fell silent again, the weight of the discovery settling heavily on all of us. This wasn't just predicting descent. It was designing its impossibility, engineering compliance, potentially erasing the very concept of resistance from the human mind, starting with places like Haverton Ridge. As the horrifying data continued to flow across the holographic displays, revealing layer after layer of Division 14's monstrous ambition, I offered a silent, desperate prayer that Dr. Voss's theoretical counter-compounds could truly undo what had been started. The thought of Petra facing her brother, only to find someone irrevocably altered, a stranger wearing his face. It was a possibility too painful to contemplate fully, yet one we now had to confront head-on. Chapter 5. Accelerated Timelines. Sleep offered little escape, my mind still churning with the implications of Project Chrysalis, the sheer scale of it, the insidious methodology. I found Petra already awake in one of the Outpost's starkly elegant dietary facilities. The simulated dawn light filtering through the vaulted ceiling felt strangely sterile despite its warm hue. She sat alone, a cup of surprisingly real coffee untouched before her, her gaze locked fiercely onto a datapad displaying satellite imagery and detailed schematics of Haverton Ridge. Her focus was absolute, the intensity radiating from her almost a physical force. Planning the rescue? I asked quietly, pouring myself a coffee reel, a luxury I hadn't expected, and sitting opposite her. She looked up, startled from her concentration, trying to get the lay of the land. It's been years. Maps change. Her fingers traced a line on the screen, a residential district bordering sprawling agricultural zones. A barely perceptible tremor ran through her hand before she deliberately stilled it, balling it into a fist for a second before relaxing. Sarai confirmed they're assembling an intervention team, she said, her voice clipped, forcing professionalism over the raw emotion bubbling beneath. Techs specialized in environmental sampling, medics with counteragent training, security specialists for extraction under potential resistance. She met my gaze, the vulnerability quickly hardening back into resolve. Including Torin, if we can reach him in time. It still feels frighteningly convenient, I admitted, lowering my voice. His colony just happens to be one of the few known test sites? The analyst in me couldn't shake the suspicion, even as the human part hoped desperately it was just coincidence. Petra's expression hardened, but not defensively, analytically. I considered that possibility, she stated flatly. Voss showed me pre-existing intel logs. Haverton was already flagged months ago for unusual requisitions of specific atmospheric trace compounds and water purification catalysts. The chrysalis data just confirmed why. She pushed the datapad aside forcefully. And frankly, Elias, if there's even a whisper of a chance Torin's in danger from this, her gesture encompassed everything we'd learned. The monstrous scope of Nexus integration. I have to go. Too many people lost already. Mavic, the crew on the railhead. I won't abandon Torin to this fate. The raw determination in her voice was absolute, non-negotiable. I wasn't going to argue, I assured her gently. Just worried. Splitting up feels tactically risky. We're stronger together if the Concordat isn't entirely straightforward. Tactically, yes. It's suboptimal, she conceded with a grimace. But we need ground intel confirmation of compound delivery, assessment of population effects, and I need to get to Torin. This is the only viable path for both objectives. She looked back at the datapad, her focus shifting back to the problem at hand. And speaking of intel, she tapped the screen, zooming in on a water reclamation schematic. Look at this distribution pattern for the mineral enhancement additives. It correlates perfectly with the primary water feeds to the worker dormitory sectors and the large hydro-op facilities like Torrens. That's got to be the primary contamination vector. Good catch, I acknowledged, leaning closer to examine the data flow schematics, my analytical brain kicking in. If we can confirm that on-site, sample the specific feeder lines, it could drastically narrow down the search for affected individuals and focus the medical team's counteragent deployment. Before we could delve deeper, Dr. Voss's composed voice cut through the quiet ambience via the local comm system, lacking its earlier warmth. General briefing, central operations, 10 minutes. Attendance mandatory for all Cinder team personnel and section leads. Urgent updates regarding chrysalis analysis trajectory. Petra frowned, exchanging a look with me. Urgent updates? Analysis trajectory? Sarai mentioned something last night. An accelerated timeline discovery? That doesn't sound good, I murmured, the untouched coffee suddenly tasting bitter. The knot of dread tightened in my stomach. Central operations pulsed with controlled tension. The ambient light was lower, focusing attention on the large central holographic console. Jax and Malco were already there, looking grim. Dr. Voss stood beside the console, flanked by Sarai and several other focused Concordat specialists, whose faces were pale and strained. As Voss began speaking without preamble, a complex multi-layered timeline materialized above the console, stark white lines branching against a dark background. Our deep analysis of the chrysalis core architecture, cross-referenced with embedded project management logs, has revealed a development significantly altering Division 14's projected timeline, she stated, her voice stark, stripped of pleasantries. She indicated the primary track on the glowing display. Phase 1, Volatile Identification and Containment Port Sumner, represented a key testbed, completed. She highlighted a broader branching network. Phase 2, Widespread Societal Monitoring and Passive Behavioral Influence, already partially implemented across core sectors. Her finger traced a third branch, which abruptly pulsed with an ominous deep red light, sending jagged projection lines shooting forward. Phase 3 Nexus integration involving direct neural influence capabilities. We previously estimated full deployment was years away, pending further refinement and testing. The display zoomed in dramatically on the red branch, showing logistics routes, resource allocations rushing towards completion, new deployment schedules solidifying in real time. These recovered logs and production manifests indicate a far more accelerated timeline, Voss continued, her voice tight with grim certainty. First-generation neural interface devices, cleverly disguised as mandatory civilian health monitors, have already been distributed via standard medical supply chains to facilities across 17 core worlds in the last 6 months. Neurochemical modification compounds have been synthesized in bulk quantities sufficient for wide deployment, and the central chrysalis algorithms have received updates incorporating adaptive learning from the beta sites.
How soon? Petra demanded, her voice cutting sharply through the technical details, the blood draining from her face. Initial wide-scale implementation targeting key governmental, military, and educational administrative personnel, Dr. Voss replied grimly, meeting Petra's intense gaze directly, is scheduled to begin in less than 30 standard days. The date flared on the timeline, stark, undeniable, terrifyingly close. A stunned, horrified silence filled the chamber. Not years, days. Once key societal control nodes administrators, officers, educators are adjusted via mandatory health screenings, Voss pressed on relentlessly, hammering home the horrifying efficiency. They will unconsciously facilitate the extension of requirements downward through their respective organizations. Current projections estimate 70% core world population coverage within 6 months following initial rollout. All mandate territories within 12. And Haverton Ridge? Petra's voice was ice, barely controlled. The test sites? Our accelerated field trials, already in progress, Voss confirmed, her expression hardening. Refining the mass deployment protocols before the core world rollout begins, perfecting the dosage, monitoring mass psychological effects. 30 days, Jack summarized bluntly, skepticism warring with shock on her face. 30 days to do what? Expose them? The mandate will deny everything, bury the evidence, silence anyone who speaks out. Information control is their primary weapon. Partially correct, Captain, Voss acknowledged grimly. Exposure alone is now insufficient given this timeline. We are forced to initiate a multifaceted, high-risk counteroffensive, effective immediately. The main display shifted, splitting into multiple operational schematics, concurrent mission tracks unfolding. 1. Targeted, verifiable data disclosure packets sent via secure backchannels to initiate internal mandate investigations and leverage consortium legal injunctions. 2. Direct kinetic disruption of identified compound production facilities and distribution nodes. She highlighted several locations. 3. Technical countermeasures aimed at disrupting chrysalis central processing via targeted network intrusions. And 4th, Sarai added, stepping forward, her gaze sweeping across us. Rapid extraction of vulnerable populations and key witnesses from active test sites, beginning immediately with Haverton Ridge. The plan was breathtakingly ambitious, bordering on reckless given the time frame. But the level of detail already populating the display, specific coordinates, personnel lists, pre-positioned assets, intricate logistical routes showed extensive contingency planning was already in place. This is why the Concordat has monitored Division 14 for years, Voss explained, her voice regaining some measure of control. Why we built networks, positioned resources, developed countermeasures in theoretical stages. Your data provided the final verification, the critical targeting parameters, allowing for precision activation of these pre-planned contingencies. You now need to decide where you fit within these operations, Sarai stated, addressing our small crew directly. Multiple urgent options are available. Miss Juno has already stated her interest in the Haverton Ridge intervention team. The rest of you, I'm going with her, I interrupted, the decision solidifying instantly, overriding my earlier caution. This wasn't just about suspicion anymore. My analytical skills are relevant there. If Nexus uses disguised implants and environmental vectors, tracing those physical distribution pathways, analyzing local network traffic for control signals on the ground. That requires real-time data analysis expertise beyond standard environmental checks.
I can help pinpoint how they're doing it in Haverton specifically.
Sarai blinked. A flicker of surprise quickly smoothed over. Your skill set could indeed prove valuable for on-site analysis, Mr. Strand. If that is your confirmed preference. Captain Meridian? Engineer Kane? Jax glanced at Malco, then back at the schematic showing heavily fortified infrastructure nodes targeted for disruption. A silent understanding passed between them, a mutual recognition of where their unique talents lay. Technical countermeasures, Jax said firmly, nodding towards the infrastructure targets. If you're hitting their core production and processing facilities, you need people who know how to bypass non-standard security, both physical and virtual. Those places will be locked down tighter than a banker's vault with bleeding-edge mandate tech. Malco and I handle hardware. Dr. Voss nodded curtly, already adjusting the deployment schematic, assigning personnel icons. Very well. Detailed operational briefings for each team commence immediately. Haverton Ridge Intervention Team departs in 6 hours via the Skylark, rapid response vessel. Technical insertion teams deploy staggered over the following 12 hours. As the tense briefing broke up, specialists hurrying to their assigned roles, Sarai approached Petra and me. Your decision to remain together is noted, she said, her tone carefully neutral, perhaps assessing the strength of our loyalty to each other. Your specific skills may indeed prove valuable at Haverton Ridge, Mr. Strand. The timeline? Petra asked, needing absolute confirmation. 30 days, is that firm? A conservative estimate derived directly from their own accelerated logistics schedules. Sarai replied gravely. This may genuinely be the last window of opportunity to prevent mandate control reaching a level where psychological resistance becomes conceptually impossible for those fully integrated into the Nexus system. The chilling thought hung in the air between us, a future where compliance wasn't merely enforced, but neurologically inevitable, the very desire for freedom engineered away. We'll be ready in 6 hours, Petra assured her, resolve hardening her features into granite. She glanced towards me, a silent confirmation passing between us. Whatever it takes, to stop this, and get my brother out. Sarai nodded once, seemingly satisfied, and swept away to coordinate other aspects of the unfolding operation. Petra and I exchanged a look relief at the decision made, profound apprehension for what lay immediately ahead on Haverton Ridge, but underscored by grim determination. Haverton Ridge, I said quietly, the name now synonymous with dread. Walking right into the heart of an active Division 14 test site. Are we sure this isn't just jumping from one fire straight into the furnace? Not certain of anything anymore, Petra admitted, her gaze distant for a second, likely picturing Torin, before firming again. Except that we have to try, and at least we're moving forward together. Facing this together, that has to count for something. As we turned to gather our few belongings and prepare for the Skylark, I knew she was right. Whatever the Concordate's full agenda, whatever traps lay hidden within their convenient assistance, the immediate threat of Nexus integration was clear, monstrous, and terrifyingly close. And facing it together, despite the tactical risks, felt like the only viable choice left in a universe rapidly running out of options. Chapter 6. The Skylark. If the Nomad felt like stepping into the future, the Skylark felt like being crammed back into the gritty, functional present. It hummed with barely contained power, yes, but lacked any trace of organic elegance. This was a tool, brutally efficient. Corridors were narrow, utilitarian gray, pipes and conduits exposed overhead, secured with practical clamps. The air tasted metallic, thick with the tang of recycled oxygen, engine coolant, and faintly scorched wiring, the smell of a ship pushed hard and often. Scuff marks scarred the deck plates near hatchways, and the occasional panel cover showed signs of hasty repairs. Everything was function over form, built for speed, stealth, and survivability, not comfort. It felt less like the Nomad's strange smoothness and more like a stripped-down predator familiar mandate military lines, discernible beneath modifications I couldn't quite place, sharper angles, unusual sensor arrays. Fast response cutter, Harrier-class derivative, concordant modifications, Captain Ellis Reed confirmed, her introduction as brief and intense as her focused gray eyes. Short, practical auburn hair framed a face accustomed to high-risk operations, lines etched around her eyes from stress or squinting at tactical displays. She had a habit of tapping the chrono integrated into her wrist unit every few seconds, a constant, jittery reminder of the ticking clock. She gets us in, gets us out, enough teeth to discourage casual trouble, enough stealth systems layered on the frame to avoid the serious kind. She led us through the efficient main deck past crew members, moving with quiet, practiced coordination in similar gray fatigues towards a compact tactical planning area near the cramped bridge. The space was dominated by functional displays and fold-down seating. Mission parameters, insertion, Haverton Ridge, Reed stated, activating a holographic map showing the sprawling colony, highlighting the Southern Agricultural District in pulsating red. Objectives: assess Nexus integration status via environmental and biological sampling. Locate and extract priority targets, specifically Tor and Juno, if exposure confirmed and extraction viable. Maximum operational window: 72 standard hours on station. Her fingers drummed impatiently on the console edge. 72 hours to find one man in 200,000 and assess an unknown chemical threat? I questioned, the scale feeling dauntingly impossible against the tight time frame. We're not going in completely blind, Reed countered curtly, pulling up other displays showing overlaid data streams. Concordant infiltration teams mapped primary distribution nodes for the suspected Nexus compounds during prior reconnaissance water treatment plant outflows, atmospheric processing vents. She pointed to a glowing marker on the map. Intel correlates your brother's registered hydro-op coordinates 12 clicks down gradient from a confirmed primary distribution point. Petra leaned closer, studying the map intently, her face tightening as she recognized landmarks distorted by years in development. The grid references, they're accurate, she confirmed quietly, her voice strained. Cover identities, mandate agricultural oversight, efficiency audit team, Reed continued, displaying flawless digital credentials that shimmered into view. Standard inspection protocols should blend with normal administrative traffic. Won't Division 14 have Haverton under surveillance? I asked, picturing hidden watchers, automated systems flagging any anomaly. Subtly, Reed acknowledged with a slight grim twist of her lips. They need plausible deniability for this phase. Too much overt security would flag them to legitimate mandate agencies still unaware of Chrysalis's full scope. Our cover holds against standard port authority and local security checks. She indicated the team roster projected beside the map, 12 personnel total, including Petra and me. 2 environmental techs for sample analysis, 2 neuromedics, including Dr. Cato, specializing in counteragent administration, 6 security specialists for extraction and close protection. She gestured to a slim, androgynous individual standing quietly nearby, observing us with unnerving stillness. Pale skin, almost translucent, contrasted with dark clothing. At their temples, silver neural implants gleamed subtly, integrated almost seamlessly beneath the hairline, the only hint of visible tech. This is Talus, primary ground operations handler, experienced in contested extractions within denied areas. Talus inclined their head fractionally, assessing us with calm, unnervingly perceptive eyes, irises the color of shifting storm clouds, a complex gray-violet that seemed to absorb the surrounding light. Division 14 shadow zones exhibit predictable operational patterns, they said, their voice a low, resonant harmonic, almost melodic but lacking typical human cadence variations, hinting at sophisticated vocal modulation tied to their implants.
We exploit the gaps they necessarily leave while maintaining their required facade of normalcy.
And if our cover is compromised? Petra asked directly, her tactical mind already mapping contingencies, testing Talus's readiness. Aggressive extraction protocols engage immediately, Talus replied without hesitation, their tone level, almost soothing despite the grim implication. The Skylark maintains low orbit standby, engines hot, ready for immediate atmospheric retrieval. Multiple emergency exfil points are pre-cached based on terrain analysis. The level of detailed preparation, the calm acceptance of extreme risk, was impressive, yet unsettlingly routine for them. This wasn't their first foray into Division 14's clandestine operations. Depart insertion vector in 30 minutes, Reed announced briskly, closing the displays. Quarters assignments Deck 3, Section C. Gear check at 0500. Tactical briefing on infiltration procedures continues en route. Arrival burn at Haverton Planetary System in 18 standard hours. She paused as I opened my mouth. Conventional jump drive, high-yield translation signatures are too conspicuous for this insertion profile. Different tools for different jobs. With a final tap on her chrono, she turned and departed for the bridge. Talus remained for a moment, studying Petra and me, their strangely colored eyes seeming to see more than just our faces. You carry a heavy burden into this operation, they observed, their gaze seeming to encompass not just the mission's danger, but our entire desperate journey since Port Sumner. Fear for the target is a natural human response, but operational success is enhanced by focused detachment. My focus is fine, Petra stated coolly, though I saw the flicker of raw emotion anger. Fear for Torin that Talus's detached comment provoked before she suppressed it. Indeed, Talus replied, a hint of something unreadable empathy, clinical assessment, softening their enigmatic expression fractionally. The target status is paramount to mission success. The comm chime on Talus's wrist sounded softly. We should prepare for departure. As Talus left, Petra and I exchanged a loaded glance. Talus's file, partially visible during the briefing, mentioned 7 previous extractions from suspected Division 14 test sites. Over 200 individuals rescued or recovered. The Concordat wasn't just resisting. They were actively waging a covert shadow war, pulling victims out of the fire where they could. Feels like we stepped into something far bigger, far more organized than Sarai initially let on, I murmured as we navigated the narrow corridor towards our assigned quarters. One side trying to subtly rewire brains for compliance, the other side running high-risk smuggling ops to pull victims out. Petra replied grimly, shaking her head. And neither faction seems fully transparent about their methods or ultimate goals. Still feel like it was the right choice, coming with them? She paused at the hatch to our small cabin. It felt like the only viable choice, she clarified, her voice firming. Whether it's right? She shook her head again, pushing the philosophical question aside. Getting Torin out, assessing what they've done to him, potentially reversing it, that's the mission now. That part is non-negotiable. Launch was smooth, utilitarian, the Skylark disengaging from the outpost and accelerating with practiced military precision before the familiar gut-wrenching lurch of a standard jump drive, engaging ripped us across interstellar distances. During the long transit hours, the tactical briefing continued, focusing heavily on the suspected Nexus integration compounds. Dr. Imani Kato, the lead neurospecialist, intense, precise, with dark eyes that missed nothing, took the lead, displaying complex neural pathway diagrams on a portable hollow emitter. Based on Dr. Voss's analysis and fragments from previous sites, these are not crude control agents, she explained, highlighting specific synaptic junctions. They appear to be subtle modulators, likely aerosolized or waterborne. They don't command, they influence. Specifically targeting limbic system interfaces related to risk assessment, dopamine pathways linked to pattern recognition,
and prefrontal cortex functions associated with critical analysis, the very cognitive functions that facilitate independent thought and resistance. So, you don't even realize your thinking is being manipulated, I clarified, the insidious logic sending a fresh wave of coldness through me. Precisely, Dr. Cato confirmed grimly. The exposed individual feels normal, perhaps even calmer, more focused, more agreeable. But their baseline cognitive processing subtly shifts over time. Ambiguous data is interpreted in favor of established narratives. Institutional messaging gains enhanced credibility. Contradictory evidence gets dismissed more easily as noise or error. It reinforces itself gradually, creating persistent neural adaptations. Petra visibly tensed beside me, her hand clenching unconsciously as Cato spoke, clearly imagining Torin thoughtful, once stubbornly independent Torin slowly, unknowingly losing his ability to question, to see the truth behind the facade. How long has Haverton likely been exposed? Petra asked, her voice strained but level. Supply chain records suggest significant compound precursor deliveries began roughly 4 months ago, Talis replied from their monitoring station, placing current potential exposure in the intermediate range. Is the damage reversible? I pressed, thinking of Torin, needing some sliver of hope. Dr. Cato hesitated, her professional optimism tempered by scientific caution. Potentially. Our countercompounds are designed to disrupt the specific enzymatic processes, creating the neural adaptations and encourage neuroplastic regeneration, especially effective with early or short-term exposure. Her gaze met Petra's, holding it kindly but firmly. Success rates demonstrably decrease with prolonged exposure, typically declining significantly after the 6-month mark. The clock was ticking, louder than ever. If Torin had been breathing that air, drinking that water for 4 months. Objective 1 upon insertion. Gamma Team secures environmental samples from predetermined locations near Juno Hydroponics to confirm active compound presence and type, Talis outlined, displaying our specific team roster and insertion point again. Objective 2. Gamma Team Miss Juno, Mr. Strand, supported by agri-specialists Corvin and Rila, makes direct contact with Torin Juno under agricultural inspection, pretext to assess condition. They displayed the cover identities again. Evaluate cognitive responses. Look for specific behavioral markers consistent with intermediate exposure. You mentioned previous extractions, I said suddenly, seizing on the earlier reveal, needing clarification. From Haverton Ridge specifically? Talis paused, those unsettling gray-violet eyes meeting mine before they gave a slow nod. Correct. 3 mid-level research personnel extracted from the Northern Administrative District approximately 8 standard weeks ago. Exposure duration estimated at 2 months. What was their condition? Petra asked sharply. The early-stage cognitive shifts. Observed symptoms included decreased sensitivity to logical inconsistencies in official directives, diminished abstract pattern recognition abilities, and heightened susceptibility to confirmation bias, Dr. Cato confirmed clinically. With intensive treatment following extraction, we successfully reversed most measurable cognitive effects. And you didn't think this tactically relevant detailed confirmation of nexus effects on Haverton warranted inclusion in the initial briefing? Petra challenged, ice returning to her voice, the calculated withholding triggering her ingrained suspicion. Why hold that back? What else are they managing? Previous operation parameters and intelligence contributed to refining the methodology for this mission, but do not alter current primary objectives, Talis replied, their calm unnerving, deflecting the implied accusation of manipulation. Confirmation of effect reversibility increases this mission's probability of achieving its secondary objective, successful target recovery. It informs Dr. Cato's treatment plan. Petra accepted the logical, if frustratingly detached explanation, but filed the withholding away. Another piece suggesting the Concordat played its own calculated games. And once we confirmed Torin's status,
Immediate extraction initiation if exposure is confirmed and target condition permits, Tallis stated flatly. Dr. Cato administers initial counter compounds en route to the extraction point. Skylark remains on high alert station for emergency retrieval via shuttle or direct atmospheric pickup if situation degrades. The detailed briefing concluded shortly after. The Concordat team exuded a chilling professionalism and almost practiced ease with operating in the enemy shadow. It should have been reassuring. Instead, it starkly highlighted the vast, hidden, and morally ambiguous conflict we were now inextricably caught within. Thoughts? Petra asked quietly as we returned to our cramped quarters to grab a few hours of rest before arrival. Wondering about the Concordat's ultimate endgame, I admitted honestly. They're incredibly organized, astonishingly capable, far beyond mere concerned scientists. This feels like a competing power block, not just a resistance movement. Does it change the immediate objective? Petra countered pragmatically, stripping the situation down to its core necessity. Find Torin. Assess his condition. Extract him if compromised. No, I conceded heavily. It doesn't change that. But the after, the what next, it gets significantly more complicated. Right now, Petra said, pausing at the hatch, her gaze firming with resolve. They offer the only tangible chance to pull Torin back from the brink of whatever Nexus integration truly means. For now, that has to be enough. As the Skylark sped silently through the black towards the unsuspecting colony of Haverton Ridge, I tried to focus solely on the mission parameters. Simple objectives on paper, complex and dangerous execution. Find Torin, assess the damage, bring him back. Everything else, the shadow war between giants, the Concordat's true nature, our own uncertain futures in their potentially controlling embrace would have to wait. Assuming, of course, we made it through Haverton Ridge alive. Chapter 7. Haverton Ridge. Haverton Ridge unfolded beneath the descending shuttle, not as the dusty, bustling agri-hub I vaguely imagined, but as a portrait of unsettling tidiness. From orbit, the geometric precision of the sprawling hydroponic domes and residential blocks was impressive. Up close, it was unnerving. Landing at the municipal spaceport felt less like arriving at a frontier colony and more like entering a meticulously maintained corporate campus. Surfaces gleamed permacrete walkways free of litter, plaster-steel benches showing no wear, shuttle platforms operating on silent, perfectly synchronized schedules. Our team, Petra, myself, the two unassuming agri-specialists Corvin and Rilla, and Tallis coordinating remotely via encrypted comms, disembarked into this unnerving calm. The air was clean, almost sterile, lacking the usual chaotic mix of smells, exhaust fumes, frying food, unfiltered biological scents that defined most settlements. Here, it smelled faintly of ozone and recycled water. People moved with a quiet efficiency, their expressions placid, acknowledging each other with polite nods, but engaging in little spontaneous conversation. Laughter was noticeably absent. Most wore the standard utilitarian jumpsuits of agri-workers, devoid of personal pins, patches, or modifications. And nearly everyone, I noted with a growing unease, wore the sleek, almost invisible biomonitor bracelet, mandated for preventative health tracking, the supposed disguise for the Nexus implants. Maintain operational tempo, Tallis's subtly modulated voice murmured in our secure implants. Local security patrolling standard patterns. No elevated alert status detected. Proceed to assign coordinates for environmental sampling and target contact. We boarded an automated public transport maglev shuttle, blending seamlessly with the dozens of other placid commuters. As the shuttle slid silently through the orderly streets, Petra stared out the window, her knuckles white where she gripped the grab bar. It wasn't like this, she murmured, almost too low for me to hear. It was messier, more alive. People argued in the streets, kids played loud games, vendors shouted,
This feels... She struggled for the word. Polished. Engineered, I supplied grimly, watching the synchronized flow of pedestrians crossing at designated points. No one jaywalking, no one lingering. The wrongness pressed in, a suffocating blanket of manufactured calm. We disembarked near the Southern Agricultural District, the air now carrying the faint, damp, earthy smell of hydroponics, yet still lacking the usual background hum of machinery or worker chatter. The hydro-op facility designated as Torin Junos was impressive, a vast, translucent dome shimmering under the artificial sunlight spectrum.
Clean, efficient, quiet, too quiet. Corvin and Rila, our specialist cover, smoothly engaged the facility access protocols, citing our mandate agri-oversight directives. An automated system granted immediate clearance. Inside, the humid air was thick with the scent of growing vegetation and nutrient solutions. Workers moved among the rows of vibrant green crops with focused, almost rhythmic efficiency, adjusting environmental controls, monitoring nutrient flows. They performed their tasks perfectly, yet robotically, their faces smooth, lacking the usual lines of exertion or concentration. And then Petra saw him. Through a lattice of hanging vines heavy with genetically engineered fruit, a man stood inspecting a complex nutrient filtration system. Tall, lean, with the familiar sandy hair cut practical and short, wearing the standard gray jumpsuit. Torin. Petra froze for a heart-stopping second, then moved forward, trying to keep her stride measured, professional, fighting the overwhelming urge to run to him. I stayed back slightly, activating my specialized multispectral scanner disguised as a standard environmental analysis tool, nominally checking air quality while actually searching for telltale nexus compound signatures and anomalous energy patterns. Hydroponics Manager Juno? Petra called out, her voice commendably steady, echoing slightly in the vast, quiet space. Torin turned. His face was blank. Not hostile, not welcoming, simply neutral. His eyes, the same clear blue Petra shared, seemed frustratingly vacant, lacking the spark of recognition, the warmth she must have desperately hoped to see. He regarded her with polite, professional indifference. Yes, he replied, his voice level, inflectionless. Section Foreman Torin Juno. Can I assist you, Inspector? Torin, Petra said, taking another step closer, letting her professional facade slip slightly, urgency coloring her tone. Torin, it's me. Petra, your sister. He tilted his head slightly, a gesture of mild analytical curiosity, devoid of any emotional weight. Designation sister, he repeated slowly. Familial relationship, noted. My personnel file indicates a sibling listed as Petra Juno, formerly IPU service, current status unknown. He consulted a small datapad integrated into his forearm. Your credentials appear valid, Inspector Juno. Welcome to Hydroponics Unit 7. Is there a specific aspect of our operational efficiency you wish to audit? Petra stared, momentarily speechless, the hope draining visibly from her face, replaced by disbelief and dawning horror. You don't recognize me? She stammered, the question raw with pain. Recognition parameters are complex? Torin replied smoothly, his gaze detached. He gestured vaguely around the immaculate facility. Emotional variables can introduce inefficiencies. Maintaining optimal focus on production quotas is paramount for planetary resource stability. Torin, listen to me, Petra pleaded, her voice trembling slightly now, desperation creeping in. She reached out, almost touching his arm, then drew back as if burned. Remember the orbital farm? Remember Dad teaching us how to calibrate the atmosphere processors? Remember Mom's awful synth protein birthday cakes? He blinked slowly. Orbital farm designation G47, recorded in historical family logs. Parental units deceased. Cause listed as structural failure incident G47. Synth protein analysis indicates suboptimal nutritional value. He recited the facts with the flat affect of an archive query, devoid of any warmth, any shared memory. Don't you remember arguing with Dad about wanting to paint the hydroponics bay wall with glowing orchids? Petra pressed, seizing on a specific, vivid memory of Torin's youthful, stubborn passion. Flashback, Torin, maybe 16, face flushed, gesturing wildly, arguing passionately with their father about the aesthetic necessity of bioluminescent flora brightening up the sterile farm environment. Eyes bright, alive with conviction, even over something trivial. Now, that fire was utterly extinguished. Bioluminescent enhancements are not within current operational efficiency protocols, Torin stated calmly. Aesthetic considerations are secondary to yield optimization. He looked past her, towards the filtration system he'd been inspecting. If your audit requires specific data access, Inspector, please specify the parameters. My work schedule requires adherence. Heartbreak etched itself onto Petra's face. This wasn't her brother. This was a shell, a beautifully functioning automaton wearing his skin, speaking with his voice, but utterly hollowed out from within. She took a shaky step back, leaning against a support strut, the fight seeming to drain out of her. The flat, emotionless delivery, the complete lack of micro-expressions, the tiny, unconscious facial movements that convey genuine feeling. It was chilling confirmation. Intermediate exposure, Dr. Cato had said. Already devastatingly effective. While Petra reeled, my scanner pinged urgently. Not Nexus compounds, those readings were faint. Background noise as expected. This was different. A persistent, low-level encrypted data stream pulsing rhythmically throughout the facility. Too structured for environmental controls, too complex for standard facility networks. Petra, I murmured into our private comm channel, keeping my voice low, my movements casual, as I pretended to adjust my scanner. Something's wrong here. Getting an anomalous signal, encrypted repeating pattern. Origin point seems to be inside this building. Acknowledged. Talus's calm voice replied instantly in my ear. Corvin, Rila, continue environmental sampling. Elias, investigate discreetly. Petra, maintain contact pretext. Torin had turned back to his filtration system, seemingly oblivious, his movements precise, economical. Petra gathered herself, forcing her stricken expression back into a semblance of professional neutrality, though her eyes remained haunted. Hydroponics manager Juno, she said, her voice brittle but controlled. We require access to your central environmental control hub. Standard procedure to verify system integrity and resource allocation adherence. Certainly, Inspector, Torin replied smoothly, gesturing towards a corridor leading deeper into the facility core. Follow me. As we walked, I focused on tracking the signal. It intensified as we approached the control hub, a sterile room filled with glowing status panels and humming machinery. Using concordant tools layered onto my scanner, I probed the encryption. Weak points yielded fragments, node sync confirm, compliance metric update, optimize emotional baseline, chillingly familiar echoes of chrysalis terminology. Then I saw it. A secondary comms relay, bolted unobtrusively beneath the main environmental control panel, subtly different from standard mandate hardware. The signal emanated directly from it. This wasn't just local network traffic. Applying a concordant decryption key known to be associated with certain Black Ops Division 14 projects, the data stream cracked open further. Routing headers flashed past not just local Haverton addresses, but secure subspace relays keyed to Sector Gamma, Core World Administrative Servers, Military Command Networks. My blood ran cold. Comprehension dawned with sickening force. This wasn't just a local control signal for Haverton's populace. The frequency, the modulation pattern, the handshaking protocols, they matched the theoretical specifications for the mass-distributed civilian health monitors. This relay wasn't just receiving orders, it was part of a coordinating network, syncing data, distributing updated compliance parameters, across millions of implants already deployed on core worlds. Haverton wasn't just a test site refining dosage. It was an active, crucial relay node in the Nexus integration network right now, broadcasting subtle control adjustments to countless unsuspecting citizens light years away. The sheer horrifying scale of it, the audacity, it hit me like a physical blow. Division 14 wasn't just preparing for mass control, they were actively implementing it, using places like this as hidden nerve centers. "Talis," I transmitted urgently, my voice shaking slightly despite my effort to control it, keeping one eye on Torin, who was patiently explaining nutrient flow algorithms to a numb-looking Petra. "You need to see this. The signal? It's not local. It's coordinating the Nexus network, across core worlds. This facility, it's a live command relay." A beat of absolute silence on the comm channel, the first time Talis had shown even a hint of surprise. Then, their voice returned, laced with a new, sharp urgency that cut through their usual calm detachment. "Confirmed analysis reciprocal. This drastically elevates operational priority. New primary objective, neutralize that relay immediately. Secondary, extract Torin Juno if tactically feasible. All teams converge on Gamma location. Extraction protocols shifting to immediate action. Stand by for engagement." The mission had just exploded. This wasn't just a rescue anymore. It was sabotage, striking at the operational heart of Nexus integration itself, right here, in this unsettlingly placid hydroponics facility, standing face to face with the chilling reality of what that system did to a human soul. And the entire weight of Division 14's attention was likely about to crash down upon us. Chapter 8, Fracture Point. The placid calm of the control hub shattered. Talis's voice, sharp and urgent in our ears. "Engage. Priority target, relay, secondary, Juno. Hostile reinforcements inbound. Estimated arrival 3 minutes was the signal. Everything accelerated." Corvin and Rila, the unassuming agri-specialists, moved with surprising speed, shedding their cover identities like discarded skins. Corvin slammed a heavy magnetic charge onto the relay chassis beneath the console, while Rila drew concealed stun pistols, covering the main entrance. Torin reacted instantly, but not with human alarm. His movements remained eerily smooth, economical, driven by program directives. "Unauthorized system interference detected," he stated calmly, activating a silent alarm sequence on his forearm datapad. "Security protocols engaged. Please remain stationary." "Sorry, Torin," Petra whispered, heartbroken but resolute, drawing her own sidearm concordant issue, sleek and deadly. "We can't let them use you like this." Gunfire erupted from the corridor, plasma bolts searing the air, scoring black streaks across the sterile white walls. Concordant security specialists, bursting in from a side maintenance passage, returned fire with disciplined bursts of kinetic slugs that hammered against the incoming attacker's body armor. The room filled with the shriek of ricocheting shots, the sharp tang of ozone, and the sudden heat of discharged energy weapons. "Relays shielded!" Corvin yelled over the din, wrestling with the magnetic charge which sparked erratically against an invisible energy barrier. "Can't get a clean link! Petra! Target distraction!" Talis commanded via comms. Petra didn't hesitate. Firing over Torin's shoulder, suppressing the doorway guards, she moved towards him. "Torin, listen to me. Fight it. Fight whatever they put inside you." He turned towards her, not with anger, but with calculated defense protocols activating. He moved surprisingly fast, attempting a disarming maneuver, his movements fluid but lacking any personal animosity, like a training drone. Petra parried awkwardly, clearly reluctant to physically harm him, pulling her punches. "Resistance is suboptimal," Torin stated calmly, pressing his attack, forcing her back towards a bank of monitors. "Compliance maximizes efficiency." "This isn't efficiency, Torin! It's erasure!" Petra cried out, desperation cracking her voice as she dodged another precise strike. Just as Torin cornered her, The main entrance exploded inward. Not security reinforcements, but Jax and Malco arriving like a force of nature. Jax vaulted over debris, twin blasters blazing, laying down pinpoint suppressing fire that drove the corridor guards back momentarily. Malco, using a massive hydraulic clamp tool like a battering ram, simply tore the shielded relay unit away from the console in a shower of sparks and shattered plasteel, the energy shield flickering and dying as its power source was severed. Relay compromise, Malco bellowed, dropping the mangled unit and drawing a heavy caliber hand cannon. Exfil point Delta. Shuttle inbound 60 seconds, Talus's voice urged. The fight intensified, becoming a frantic scramble towards the designated exit. More security flooded the corridor Haverton personnel, moving with that same disquieting programmed efficiency, firing stun bolts and kinetic rounds. In the chaotic crossfire, a stray stun bolt struck Torin high on the shoulder. He staggered, a brief flicker not of pain, but of confusion crossing his features. His programmed movements faltered. He stumbled back against a console, eyes momentarily unfocused, blinking rapidly as if trying to clear static from his vision. He looked directly at Petra, his gaze locking with hers for a single heart-stopping moment across the chaos of the firefight. "Petra," he whispered, the word thick, hesitant, utterly unlike his previous flat delivery. A spark of the brother she knew, lucid, confused, terrified, surfaced for a fraction of a second in the depths of his vacant eyes. Then his eyes rolled back, and he collapsed, unconscious. Petra gasped, stumbling towards him, the single word echoing in the sudden relative quiet of her mind amidst the gunfire. He remembers. That fragile flicker, instantly extinguished, fueled a desperate surge of ferocity within her. "Get him up!" she screamed at Corvin. "We're not leaving him!" Corvin hesitated, glancing towards the firefight raging at the door where Jax and Malco were holding back the growing tide of security forces. "Orders are priority target! He is the priority!" Petra snarled, grabbing Torin under one arm, adrenaline lending her strength. "Help me!" Reluctantly, Corvin slung Torin's other arm over his shoulder. They began dragging him towards the exfil route Jax was clearing. Suddenly, Rila cried out, stumbling back from the side corridor entrance, clutching her side where a plasma bolt had scored a burning line across her armor. "Ambush! Side passage!" More security poured in, cutting off their escape route. They were pinned down, trapped between two converging forces. "Talus! Situation critical! Need immediate diversion!" Petra yelled into her comm. "Acknowledged," Talus replied, their voice strained. "Diversionary charges activated Grid 7. Fire suppression systems triggered sector-wide. Stand by." Seconds later, distant explosions rocked the facility. Emergency klaxons blared, and thick white fire suppression foam began cascading from ceiling reds, rapidly filling the room, obscuring vision, muffling sound.
"Move! Now!" Jax roared, grabbing Petra's arm, pulling her through the blinding foam towards the exfil point where Malco was holding the hatch. They burst out into a service corridor, just as the internal blast doors began slamming shut. They were clear, but Rila hadn't made it. Petra caught a final glimpse of her being overwhelmed by security forces before the door sealed with sickening finality.
The cost of escape. High, as always. They stumbled through smoke-filled corridors, following Talus's clipped directions towards the rendezvous, a rooftop landing pad several levels up. Torin remained dead weight between Petra and Corvin. "Shuttle ETA 30 seconds," Talus updated. "Minimal resistance expected top levels, diversion focused lower sectors." They reached the rooftop, just as the sleek, angular Concordate shuttle swooped down, landing gear deploying. The rear ramp lowered, revealing Talus waiting inside, flanked by two heavily armed Concordate security personnel, their faces grim. As they hauled Torin aboard, Corvin suddenly gasped, clutching his chest, then collapsed onto the ramp, revealing a small, smoking dart embedded in his back. Sniper! Jax yelled, shoving Petra towards the shuttle interior. Tallis instantly scanned the surrounding rooftops, their eyes unnerving focused. Single shot, high-velocity neurodart, mandate special issue. They anticipated our exfil. They knelt beside Corvin, checking vitals. He's gone. Petra stared, numb with shock, another loss compounding the horror. Then she looked at Tallis, at the remaining security personnel, suspicion flaring cold and sharp within her. Too clean, too fast. The diversion, the timing, the single perfect sniper shot hitting Corvin, not her, not Torin. The echo of Mavic's betrayal whispered in her mind the calculated sacrifice, the convenient removal of witnesses. You, Petra said, voice dangerously low, turning to face Tallis fully, ignoring the urgency to leave. You knew they had snipers positioned. The diversion drew fire, but it also exposed us. Corvin. Tallis met her gaze steadily, their storm-gray eyes unreadable. Operational risks were calculated, Miss Juno. Sacrifices are sometimes unavoidable for mission-critical success, securing the relay intelligence and the primary target. Petra felt a weary resignation wash over her. The cold necessity, the calculated loss. Was Tallis merely pragmatic, or was this concordant ruthlessness, discarding pawns once their purpose was served? Did it even matter? She looked down at Torin's still form, then back at Tallis. Was Corvin compromised? Did he know something? Tallis hesitated for a fraction of a second, the briefest flicker of internal conflict before their expressions smoothed. All personnel undergo rigorous screening. There was no indication. But Petra saw it, the subtle evasion. The memory of Mavic, insisting everything was fine right before the trap sprang, solidified her distrust. She didn't challenge further. Arguing now was pointless, dangerous. She filed it away, another scar tissue layer forming over old wounds. Get us out of here, she ordered curtly, turning her attention back to Torin as the shuttle ramp hissed closed and the engines screamed, lifting them rapidly away from Haverton Ridge. Dr. Cato was already working on Torin, administering injections, monitoring his vitals on a handheld scanner. Petra watched anxiously, clinging to the memory of that single lucid word. Petra? Initial assessment, severe neurosuppression, Dr. Cato reported clinically. But underlying cognitive functions appear intact beneath the overlay. That flicker of recognition you reported? It's promising. Indicates the core personality isn't destroyed, merely heavily repressed. The counteragents should begin network disruption within hours. A small measure of relief, fragile but fiercely held. Where are we going now? Jax demanded, cleaning her blasters with sharp, angry movements, clearly rattled by the narrow escape and the losses. Not back to Karina, I assume? No, Tallis confirmed, watching the tactical display showing rapidly receding planetary coordinates. Karina Outpost is likely compromised now. Division 14 knows we possess the full Chrysalis architecture and hit a primary nexus node. Standard mandate protocols will initiate multi-vector sweeps immediately. We relocate to a more secure, isolated facility. They brought up a new navigational chart, indicating a destination deep within a notoriously turbulent, uncharted region of the fringe known as the Drift. Tertiary Concordate, Deep Range Relay. Codename, Sanctuary Station. Jax swore, violently, a string of curses that made even the hardened security personnel blink. She slammed her fist against the bulkhead, leaving a dent. Void, take it, Sanctuary? You're taking us to Sanctuary? Her face paled beneath the grime and stress, knuckles white where she gripped the edge of a console. She shot Malco a dark, haunted look that spoke volumes of shared ugly history. It's the only Concordate facility within range sufficiently equipped for Mr. Juno's advanced recovery protocols and capable of indefinite operation beyond standard mandate sensor nets, Tallis stated calmly, seemingly unfazed by Jax's visceral reaction. There's a reason it's beyond their sensor nets, You chrome-plated spook. Jax spat back, her voice tight with a dread that felt deeper than just strategic risk.
Because it's a scrap heap hellhole parked in the graveyard of empires. Nothing good ever comes out of Sanctuary. Talus merely inclined their head. Necessity dictates our course, Captain. Prepare for extended transit through unstable regions. As the shuttle rendezvoused with the waiting Skylark, and the battered ship prepared for another series of jumps, this time towards the infamous Sanctuary Station, a heavy sense of foreboding settled over the small crew. They had escaped Haverton Ridge, crippled a key Nexus relay, and recovered Torin, albeit damaged. But they had paid a heavy price in blood, exposed the Concordate's hand, and were now fleeing into the heart of the lawless fringe,
towards a place whose very name echoed with desperation and danger. The fracture point had been passed, but the path ahead looked darker than ever. Chapter 9. Neural Crossroads. The journey towards Sanctuary Station stretched into days, measured not by planetary cycles, but by the monotonous hum of the Skylark's life support and the tense quiet that settled over the crew. We were fugitives now, carrying stolen data, a damaged Nexus relay, and a man rescued from the brink of psychological oblivion. Every flicker on the sensor displays, every slight change in the engine pitch, drew tight lines around Jax's mouth as she piloted us through the treacherous sensor-dead zones of the drift. Malco spent hours reinforcing hull plating and optimizing the already modified engines, preparing for trouble he clearly expected. The ship's cramped medbay became the locus of our fragile hope. Torin was conscious, intermittently lucid, but the journey back from the Nexus's grip was proving arduous. He suffered from blinding headaches, bouts of intense confusion, and crushing fatigue that left him weak and disoriented. Dr. Kato monitored him constantly, adjusting counteragent dosages, her brow furrowed over the fluctuating neural readings displayed on her scanner. Petra rarely left his side, talking to him quietly, patiently trying to anchor him in shared memories, coaxing fragments of his true self back from the cold fog of the Nexus programming. "Remember the orchid incident, Torin?" she asked one cycle, her voice soft but insistent, holding his hand while he squinted against the medbay lights, massaging his temples. "On G47, you were 15, convinced Dad's perfectly balanced hydroponic system was aesthetically criminal?" He blinked slowly, his gaze distant, struggling. "Orchids," he murmured, the word thick. "Color. Efficiency protocols." "Forget efficiency," Petra urged gently, but with fierce determination. "Remember, you insisted on painting that entire bulkhead with bioluminescent Martian ghost orchids? Spent 3 shifts sneaking pigment binders from the recycling unit? Dad almost spaced you when the nutrient feeder clogged because you spilled luminous purple goop everywhere, trying to paint in 0G after he forbade it? You grounded for a month, scrubbing purple stains off the deck plates." A faint smile touched her lips at the memory, quickly fading as she looked at his confused face. A flicker of something sparked deep in Torin's eyes. Not full recognition, but a shadow of it. "Purple stains," he winced, pressing harder on his temples. "Head hurts. Bright." He closed his eyes, exhausted by the effort. "Against regulations. Exactly." Petra leaned closer, encouraged by the fragment. "That was you, Torin. Stubborn, passionate, always pushing boundaries, even stupid ones." He didn't respond, sinking back into a haze of fatigue and confusion. Dr. Kato placed a calming hand on Petra's shoulder. "Patience, Petra. The pathways are reconnecting, but they're damaged, rerouted. It's like untangling miles of knotted wire in the dark. Moments of clarity will come, then recede. It takes time, and significant neural effort on his part." Hope warred with frustration on Petra's face. Each glimpse of her brother beneath the Nexus overlay was agonizingly brief, a painful reminder of what had been stolen and what might never fully return. While Petra focused on Torin, I wrestled with a different kind of neurological challenge. Dallas had provided access to a concordant deep analysis interface linked directly to the mangled Nexus relay we'd recovered. It wasn't a standard console. It was a minimalist neurohaptic device, sleek gloves woven with microfilaments, and a discrete neural inductor headset that rested lightly against my temples. This interface translates complex data streams into intuitive sensory analogs, Tallis explained, their voice calm and instructive as they initiated the link. It allows for faster pattern recognition and exploitation of nonlinear data relationships, more efficient than standard code auditing. The moment the link engaged, my perception shifted. It wasn't like reading code on a screen. It was like being immersed within the data itself. The sterile hum of the Skylark faded, replaced by a low, resonant thrum that seemed to vibrate in my bones. The encrypted Nexus command structures weren't lines of text, but flowed around me like distinct currents, some cold and swift, carrying operational directives, others slower, warmer, pulsing with biometric feedback loops from countless implants. I could feel the sheer volume of information, the chilling efficiency of the network's design. Following the tangled pathways left by Division 14's programmers, I navigated the damaged relay's core logic. Connections between nodes weren't just lines on a schematic. They appeared as threads of light, intricate, shimmering webs stretching into unseen distances. Active links glowed brightly, pulsing with the live data stream we had interrupted. Dormant pathways were faint, ghostly filaments waiting for activation. It was breathtakingly complex, elegant in its terrible function. I focused on the core Nexus algorithms, the stolen heart of the system, searching for vulnerabilities, weaknesses we could exploit. It felt less like searching code and more like running my conceptual fingers over a vast, intricately carved surface of smooth, dark crystal. Most of it was flawless, hardened, impenetrable. But then I sensed it. Not a bug, not an accidental flaw, but a section that felt deliberately different, smoother than it should be, a hidden seam where the patterns didn't quite align with the system's overt architecture. It was a backdoor, a sophisticated, deeply embedded command override protocol, masked beneath layers of decoy code and false flags. It wasn't a vulnerability, it was an intentional feature, a master key left behind by the system's original architects. Its presence felt like a sliver of ice sliding down my spine, sharp, intuitive clarity that bypassed conscious analysis. This wasn't just a way in, it was a potential kill switch, or worse, a way for someone else to seize control of the entire Nexus network. Disconnecting from the interface felt like surfacing from deep water, the mundane reality of the ship crashing back with jarring intensity. My head throbbed faintly, and my hands trembled slightly. The power of the interface, the sheer clarity it offered, it was intoxicating. To grasp such complexity, to see the hidden flows, to feel the structure of the system. It was like possessing a god's eye view. But the feeling was laced with a profound unease. That intuitive leap, the way the backdoor's presence simply registered without conscious deduction, it felt unnatural, potentially dangerous. How much of that intuition was my own skill, and how much was guided by the concordant interface itself? Could such a tool be used to subtly plant ideas, guide conclusions, manipulate the user just as surely as the Nexus implants manipulated their victims? The thought lingered chillingly. Sarai's advantages, the concordant's technological superiority, their carefully curated narrative. It all felt suddenly more fragile, potentially compromised by the very tools that gave them power. They fought monsters, but what were they risking becoming in the process? Findings? Tallis prompted, appearing silently beside me, their storm-gray eyes assessing my slightly shaken state. I found it, I replied, my voice rough. I projected the code structure onto a standard display, highlighting the hidden subroutine. A master override. A backdoor built into the Nexus core code. Heavily masked, but it's there. Tallis examined the data, their usual composure undisturbed, though a new intensity entered their gaze. Intriguing. Concordant intercepts have hinted at rumored failsafes, theoretical kill switches demanded by oversight committees during Chrysalis's early phases, supposedly decommissioned later. They focused on the code. This signature, it doesn't match standard Division 14 encryption protocols. It feels older. Older? Petra asked, having approached quietly from the medbay hatchway, drawn by the shift in intensity. Potentially predating Division 14's complete absorption of the Chrysalis project, Tallis speculated, probing the code structure with their own linked device. Perhaps left by the original research team before ethical divergence occurred. A ghost of a possibility, or another calculated lie. Can we use it? Jax called out from the cockpit doorway, having overheard. Shut this whole damn thing down? The protocol complexity is immense, Tallis replied, zooming in on cryptographic layers that made my head spin just looking at them. Requires multiple cascading authentication keys, likely dispersed, possibly biometrically locked to individuals long since disappeared by Division 14. They paused, considering. But its existence confirms a fundamental vulnerability at the heart of Nexus. If the keys can be found, or the protocol bypassed, it represents a potential strategic countermeasure of immense significance. Another needle in another galactic haystack, Jax muttered darkly, turning back to her helm controls. As Tallis and I began the painstaking process of analyzing the backdoor's architecture, the Skylark decelerated sharply from its latest jump. Warning klaxons, thankfully silent for days, suddenly blared. Approaching Sanctuary Station, Jax announced, her voice tight with renewed tension. The name alone enough to raise the hairs on my neck. Picking up multiple unidentified energy signatures, heavy radiation interference. Welcome to the graveyard, folks. Hope you brought your own shovel. The fragile hope ignited by Torin's flicker of recognition and the chilling potential of the Nexus backdoor discovery felt instantly overshadowed by the palpable dread emanating from Jax, and the grim reality of arriving at a place synonymous with desperation, danger, and the ghosts of failed ambitions. Sanctuary Station, our last, best hope, and quite possibly our final resting place. Chapter 10. Sanctuary Station. Sanctuary Station didn't glide into view. It festered. A jagged conglomerate of salvaged hulls, hollowed-out asteroids, and skeletal ship frameworks fused together with visible welds and sheer desperation, clinging precariously to the edge of a swirling gravitational anomaly within the drift. Warning strobes blinked erratically across its pockmarked surface, competing with the harsh glare of unregulated fusion torches from makeshift repair docks, spitting sparks into the void. As the Skylark navigated the chaotic swarm of dented freighters and jury-rigged courier vessels vying for docking clamps, the station's reputation felt crushingly real. This wasn't a haven. It was a scar-tissue ecosystem built on survival at any cost. The airlock hissed open not onto sterile concorded corridors, but onto a wave of noise and scent that hit like a physical force. Recycled air, thick with the metallic tang of ozone from sparking conduits overhead, fought a losing battle against the pungent smoke of grilling alien meats. Screech grubs sizzling on a nearby vendor's cart, spilled synthale, unidentifiable chemical solvents, and the underlying musk of too many unwashed bodies crammed into too little space. A disharmony assaulted the ears, dozens of languages overlapping in hurried negotiations, the clang of hammers on stressed metal echoing from open repair bays, distorted announcements crackling over malfunctioning speakers, the whine of overloaded generators straining beneath the station's chaotic power demands. Crowds surged through the main thoroughfare, humans in patched vac suits, jostling with gaunt, purple-skinned Zelosians and hulking four-armed brutes whose footsteps vibrated the deck plates.
Stalls overflowed with suspect goods. Re-lifed power cells crackling ominously. Gravity-defying tools held together with clamps and prayers sputtering intermittently.
Jars of faintly glowing fungus advertised as NutriPaste Supreme, and gleaming, vaguely sinister cybernetics laid out on greasy tarps next to piles of scavenged military hardware. Everyone moved with a wary, coiled energy, eyes constantly scanning, assessing threats and opportunities. This was the desperate edge of the galaxy, where rules were suggestions and survival was the only currency that mattered. Charming, Petra muttered dryly, pulling the collar of her borrowed synth leather jacket tighter, her hand instinctively resting near the concealed sidearm beneath it. Stay alert, Jax warned, her face grim, scanning the crowd with the practiced vigilance of someone who knew these shadows intimately. Eyes open, hands near your hardware. Trust no one, especially not the ones who smile. Talus moved through the chaos with their usual unnerving calm, though their storm-gray eyes seemed to catalog every flickering light, every jury-rigged piece of technology, every desperate face. As we passed a stall where a frantic grand technician was attempting to hotwire a sputtering atmospheric condenser, using what looked disturbingly like parts scavenged from a sanitation bot, Talus paused for a fraction of a second. Their gaze lingered on the sparking wires and leaking coolant, then shifted subtly, perhaps reflecting on the silent, seamless integration of their own advanced concordate implants. Such inefficiency, Talus murmured, the observation quiet amidst the surrounding din. The inevitable result of technological stagnation driven by control rather than understanding. A different path. Different from the Concordats? I prompted, seizing the opening. Indeed, Talus replied, resuming their stride, navigating us through a knot of arguing smugglers. The Concordat emerged from a fundamental divergence within mandate research divisions decades ago. Some, like those who developed early chrysalis prototypes, saw technology solely as a tool for imposing order, optimizing populations, enforcing compliance. Others sought deeper comprehension, true advancement, believing understanding must precede control. They subtly indicated the chaotic, desperate ingenuity around us. The mandate chose stability through limitation, enforcing technological plateaus to maintain their grip. The Concordat chose exploration, even into theoretical realms the mandate deemed too dangerous or uncontrollable. Like phase translation drives, like manipulating quantum entanglement for data retrieval, like perhaps the very neural interfaces they employed. The implication hung heavily. The Concordat's path was more advanced, but potentially just as perilous in its own way. Our destination was a dimly lit, smoke-filled cantina, tucked away in a less trafficked secondary corridor, the air thick with the smell of stale synth booze and desperation. Jax led the way to a secluded back booth shrouded in shadow. Waiting there was a man who seemed carved from the station's harsh reality. Rorik. Scars mapped his face, dominated by a crude, whirring cybernetic eye that glowed a dull red. He slouched in the booth, one booted foot resting on the stained tabletop, yet radiated a coiled tension, like a predator resting but not relaxed. He didn't rise as we approached, merely watching us through his one good eye and the unsettling prosthetic, polishing the cybernetic lens with a greasy thumbprint-stained rag. "Meridian," he greeted, his voice a gravelly rasp that matched his appearance. "Still kicking? Surprised?" "Likewise, Rorik," Jax replied, her tone flinty. She remained standing, radiating distrust. "Heard you were spaced over Helios Prime." "Rumors," Rorik shrugged dismissively, taking a slow drag from a foul-smelling synth cigarette, the tip glowing orange in the gloom. "Usually started by people who owe me money, or who I left holding the bag." He looked pointedly at Jax. "Like you left my crew holding scrap at Cygnus X1 while you slipped out the back hatch with the entire damn payload?" Jax shot back, the old betrayal raw in her voice. "We lost 2 good pilots pulling mandate cruisers off your tail." Rorik blew a plume of acrid smoke towards the ceiling, unfazed. Survival, Jax. Harsh lesson, but necessary out here. You were loud, attracting heat. I made a tactical withdrawal. He finally gestured towards the bench opposite him with a jerk of his chin. Sit. You wouldn't risk Sanctuary's charming hospitality unless you needed something only I can provide. Reluctantly, Jack slid into the booth, Malco looming protectively nearby. Petra and I remained standing, observing. We need passage, Jack stated bluntly. Secure, untraceable passage out of the drift, deep into the unclaimed territories. Off mandate charts entirely. Rorik's cybernetic eye whirred faintly as he assessed us, lingering on Talis, whose calm demeanor and subtly advanced tech clearly marked them as something unusual. Passage can be arranged. For a price. The drift is hotter than usual. Mandate patrols sniffing around the edges, asking questions. He leaned forward slightly, the worn synth leather of his jacket creaking. What kind of trouble are you running from that requires vanishing that thoroughly? That's our business, Jax retorted. Talis stepped forward smoothly, placing a small encrypted data chit on the table between them. We also require access to certain specialized medical facilities available only within Rorik Freight's operational sphere. Facilities capable of advanced neural regeneration therapies. Their gaze flickered towards the med bay, where Torin remained under Dr. Cato's care. Rorik picked up the chit, turning it over in his scarred fingers. He glanced at a small battered reader built into his wrist unit. His eyebrows, one real, one scarred tissue, rose slightly. Neural region tech. High-end, expensive, complex. His gaze sharpened, flicking between the chit, Talis's impassive face, and Jax's simmering hostility. Calculation flickered in his good eye. He weighed the risk harboring fugitives clearly running from serious trouble against the reward represented by the data on the chit, likely Concordat tech or intel, far surpassing typical black market scores. He drummed his fingers on the tabletop, a slow, deliberate rhythm. My price is steep, he said finally, the calculation complete. Passage and access to my private clinic on Port Nowhere requires significant resource allocation, risk compensation. He named a figure in untraceable cryptocurrency and advanced energy cells that made even Jax flinch. Plus, he added, tapping the data chit, a full decrypted copy of whatever high-value intel this contains. Half the currency up front, Jax countered immediately, haggle kicking in despite the tension. Access codes for the intel delivered after safe arrival and successful medical transfer. 75% upfront. Intel verified upon boarding my vessel. Non-negotiable, Rorik stated flatly, leaning back, extinguishing his synth cigarette on the tabletop. His posture broadcast finality. He knew he held the leverage. Jax hesitated, glancing at Petra, then at Talis. Petra gave a minute, almost imperceptible nod. Torin's recovery superseded pride or risk mitigation. Fine, Jax ground out, bitterness evident. 75. Transfer initiated now. You guarantee safe passage and full access to your best neural team? My word is my bond, Meridian, Rorik said, a humorless smirk touching his lips. Unlike some partnerships I could mention. He pocketed the data chit, his cybernetic eye seeming to gleam with grim satisfaction. Prep your passenger for transfer. My ship, the Void Worm, lifts in 3 standard hours. Docking Bay Omega-7. Don't be late. I don't wait for stragglers. As Rorik slid out of the booth and disappeared back into Sanctuary's chaotic anonymity, Jax slammed her fist quietly onto the table. Scavenging void rat, she cursed under her breath. I swore I'd never deal with him again. Necessity dictates uncomfortable alliances, Captain, Talis observed smoothly, already verifying the crypto transfer on their own device. Yeah, well, necessity sometimes gets you stabbed in the back, Jax retorted darkly, pushing herself out of the booth. Let's get Torin moved. The sooner we're off this scrap heap and clear of Rorik's orbit, the better I'll breathe. The weight of the deal pressed down on us. We had secured the next step passage out. Access to potentially life-saving treatment for Torin. But the cost was high. Alliances were fraught with past betrayals, and our fate now rested in the hands of a man whose only guiding principles seemed to be ruthless self-interest. Leaving Sanctuary felt less like escaping danger and more like trading one precarious ledge for another, plunging deeper into the shadows where trust was a fool's luxury and survival was bought with secrets and blood. Chapter 11. Void Reckoning. The Void. Worm was a beast scarred, patched, and radiating barely contained power. Rorik ran a tight ship, crewed by grim-faced veterans who moved with cynical efficiency, their loyalty clearly bought rather than earned. We were cargo, valuable but expendable, confined to a small section, while Torin was transferred under heavy guard to the ship's surprisingly well-equipped, if ethically dubious, private medbay. Dr. Cato accompanied him, her expression tight with disapproval of the surroundings, but resolute in her duty. Days bled into one another as the Void Worm plunged deeper into the unclaimed territories, regions where mandate law was a fading transmission and survival depended on firepower, reputation, or ruthless pragmatism. Information lockdown was absolute. Rorik cut off all external comms, citing operational security. We were utterly reliant on him. The tension thickened when Talus approached Petra, Elias, Jax, and Malco in the cramped common area designated for our use. The air circulated poorly, smelling faintly of ozone and old fear. Analysis of the Nexus backdoor protocol is complete, Talus announced, projecting a complex, swirling holographic representation of the code structure between them. Confirming Mr. Strand's findings, it's a deeply embedded master override sequence, likely originating from the project's initial Prometheus phase, before Division 14 consolidated control. Can Rorik's tech savants access it? Jax asked skeptically, cleaning her blaster with meticulous grounding movements. Negative, Talus replied. The cryptographic complexity requires concordant-level decryption matrices and resonant key algorithms unavailable outside secure nodes. We possess the knowledge of the backdoor, but lack the immediate means to exploit it. Their gaze settled on Petra. Which presents a critical decision point, Mr. Juno. We must transmit this data package, the backdoor architecture, and our analysis to Concordant High Command via secured hyper-relay. Using Rorik's ship? Petra queried sharply, distrust evident. Transmitting anything from here feels like shouting our coordinates into a mandate listening post. Rorik possesses short-range, high-bandwidth burst transmitters capable of relaying to a concordant dead-drop comm buoy hidden within a nearby nebula, Talus explained. Minimal transmission time, highly directional, negligible chance of interception if timed correctly during subspace flux. They paused, the weight of the next statement settling in the small space. However, the transmission carries inherent risk. If intercepted, Division 14 gains confirmation that we know about the backdoor. They will patch it immediately, possibly even accelerate Nexus deployment to preempt any exploitation attempt. And the alternative? I asked, already seeing the grim logic unfold. We withhold transmission, Talus stated levelly. Maintain absolute secrecy regarding the backdoor. The Concordat remains unaware of this potential vulnerability, focusing solely on disrupting Nexus via conventional means: sabotage, counterintelligence, witness extraction. The larger strategy shifts. The choice hung heavy in the air. Transmit, risking immediate exposure and potentially accelerating the catastrophe, but giving the Concordat its best strategic weapon against Nexus. Or withhold, safeguarding the secret but crippling the Concordat's ability to strike at the system's heart, condemning millions to the Nexus's influence while pursuing slower, riskier conventional methods. Petra closed her eyes for a long moment. Images warred in her mind, sharp and painful. Torin's face, still drawn but regaining flashes of his old self in Rorik's medbay. The fragile hope of his recovery, The faces of Mavic, Rila, Corvin ghosts reminding her of the price already paid, the betrayals endured. Then, shifting, a horrifying abstract, millions of grey figures across countless worlds, their eyes vacant, individuality bleached away by the subtle poison of the Nexus implants, marching in placid engineered compliance. The weight felt physical, crushing, saving Torin fully, securing his future, but in a galaxy enslaved? The thought solidified, cold and sharp. What good is saving one's soul if the world he returns to is a cage? His recovery, anyone's freedom, was meaningless if Nexus won. It was the highest risk, the longest odds, but the only path that offered a chance, however slim, at genuine victory, not just personal salvation. She opened her eyes, the decision made, the burden settling onto her shoulders like a physical cloak. "We transmit," she said, her voice quiet but absolute. "Give High Command the weapon. We take the risk." Jax looked sharply at Petra, started to object, then saw the conviction in her eyes and fell silent, merely shaking her head with weary resignation. The gambler in Petra had just bet everything on a single desperate play. Talis nodded once, accepting the command without comment. "Transmission protocols will be initiated upon optimal spatial coordinates, estimated 12 standard hours." As Talis departed to make arrangements with Rorik's comm officer, I turned to the holographic display, tracing the complex architecture of the backdoor code, my mind racing. The interface, the way I'd felt the flawed seam in the crystal. It hadn't just revealed the backdoor, it had hinted at something more, a resonance, a connection to subspace instability. There might be another way, I heard myself say, the idea solidifying even as I voiced it, born from that unsettling, intuitive clarity gifted by the concordant interface. A way to use the backdoor without needing concordant decryption keys, without transmitting anything. Jack scoffed. "Don't tell me you cracked those Division 14 encryptions with Rorik's backwater tech?" "No," I admitted, gesturing towards the swirling code patterns. "But the backdoor structure. It has vulnerabilities tied to specific subspace frequencies, highly unstable ones, frequencies that occur naturally only within extreme gravitational anomalies or engineered subspace shearing zones. Like the Traverse," Petra breathed, comprehension dawning. The Traverse, a legendary, terrifying ribbon of distorted spacetime separating the charted fringe from the truly unclaimed territories. Navigating it was considered suicide by conventional means, a ship-shredding nightmare of unpredictable gravitational tides and reality-warping phenomena. "Precisely," I confirmed, tracing lines of potential resonance on the holo display. "If we could broadcast the activation sequence from within the Traverse, amplified by its natural subspace distortions, we might be able to bypass the standard cryptographic handshake. The signal itself, modulated correctly, riding the sheer energy of the Traverse, it could force the backdoor open system-wide, a brute force exploit using spacetime itself as the key." I looked at them, seeing the skepticism, the outright disbelief. "Logically," I conceded, hearing the near insanity in my own words. "This is reckless endangerment bordering on suicidal delusion. But the interface, it showed me patterns, vulnerabilities specifically linked to the kind of subspace resonance found only in the Traverse. It feels possible, terrifyingly possible." Silence greeted my proposal. Then Jack slammed her hand down on the table hard. "No, absolutely not." Her voice was raw, tight with more than just strategic disagreement. "You want to take this ship?" She indicated the groaning hull of the Void Worm. "Into the Traverse? Have you lost your void-damned mind?" Color drained from her face, replaced by a haunted look. "I lost my ship, the rascal, in a fringe anomaly zone not half as bad as the Traverse. 1 minute, plotting a standard jump. The next, alarms screaming, hull shrieking like tortured metal.
The memory surfaced, sharp and unwanted, the void outside twisting, the icy cold sucking the heat out through a hull breach near navigation. She closed her eyes, her hand instinctively tightening into a fist. Kai, my navigator, trapped at his console, saw his face on the flickering internal cam, then just static. The escape pod hatch slammed shut, sealed him in there. She opened her eyes, fury and grief warring within them. The Traverse will eat this rust bucket, and us with it. There are some lines you don't cross. Jax, Petra said gently but firmly. If Elias is right, this could neutralize Nexus, globally, without alerting Division 14 beforehand, without needing concordate keys, without relying on Rorik maintaining his word once we're deep in his territory. If he's right, Jax shot back, he's basing this on a feeling from some concordate head toy and theoretical resonance. It's suicide. It's a chance, I countered, meeting her furious gaze. A desperate one, yes, but potentially the only one we have left that doesn't rely on trust in either the concordate implicitly or Rorik explicitly. The air crackled with tension. Petra looked from Jax's visceral fear to my improbable hope, the weight of another impossible choice pressing down. Risking immediate destruction in the Traverse, based on a potentially compromised insight, or proceeding with the calculated risk of transmission and reliance on outside forces. The void. Worm groaned around them, a constant reminder of their precarious situation, plunging deeper into the lawless dark where reckoning awaited. One way or another. Chapter 12. Echoes in the Static. Chaos erupted before a decision on the Traverse could be fully debated. Proximity alarms screamed not mandate cruisers, but 3 sleek unidentified vessels dropping out of subspace directly off the Voidworm's stern, weapons already hot. Rorik's bridge crew reacted instantly, maneuvering the cumbersome freighter with surprising agility, return fire blossoming from hidden turrets. Our small common area became a temporary battle station. The ship bucked violently as plasma bolts slammed into shields, sending showers of sparks cascading from ruptured ceiling conduit and plunging the corridor into momentary darkness before emergency lighting flickered on. Stressed metal groaned around us, the deck plates vibrating ominously. A nearby bulkhead buckled inward slightly, venting thin streams of escaping atmosphere that hissed like angry ghosts. Gravity fluctuated wildly with each shield impact, making movement treacherous. Malco braced himself in a doorway, steadying a sparking power junction with one massive hand while firing his heavy cannon through a makeshift firing port Jax had blasted open moments before. "They're surgical," Jax yelled over the din, peering at a cracked tactical display repeater. "Targeting engines and shield generators. Not mandate tactics too clean, too precise. Concordate weapons signatures." Talus reported calmly from their position near a comms panel, seemingly unfazed by a nearby explosion that rocked the ship violently enough to send loose tools clattering across the floor. "Specific energy modulation patterns match Alpha Section strike teams." The implication hit like another plasma bolt. "Concordat, attacking us." "Your own people?" Petra demanded, shoving aside debris to get a clearer line of sight towards Talus. "Alpha Section operates under separate command protocols," Talus replied evenly, though a subtle tension tightened the line of their jaw, the first hint of dissonance I'd seen. Disciplined, ruthless, prioritizing asset recovery and operational security above all else. They likely registered our unscheduled detour in Rorik's non-standard vessel, deemed us compromised, and moved to neutralize the perceived threat, namely, the Nexus data and anyone possessing it. So much for trusting our allies. Jax spat bitterly, firing another controlled burst from her blasters. "Told you dealing with spooks leads to backstabbing, always." My mind raced, frantically recalibrating alliances, threat assessments. If elements within the Concordate itself were hunting us, then transmission wasn't just risky, it was potentially suicidal. Handing the backdoor key directly to a faction that might want to control Nexus, not destroy it or simply bury the threat,
and us along with it. The sickening feeling of the ground shifting beneath our feet intensified. Who could we trust? Was anyone truly fighting for freedom, or just maneuvering for power in the chaos? The void. Worm shuddered violently as a torpedo struck near the main reactor shielding. Red warning lights flashed insistently. "Reactor containment failing!" A panicked voice crackled over the internal comm from Rorik's bridge. "Hull breaches Sector Gamma! We can't hold them!" "Rorik," Jax barked into her comm link to the bridge. "Damage report, can we jump?" "Negative. Drives offline, engine slagged." Rorik's voice was tight with fury and fear. "Those concorded bastards boxed us in." "Then we give them something else to chase," Petra decided instantly, steel entering her voice. She grabbed my arm. "Elias, the Traverse plan. Is it viable now?" I looked at the failing systems, the attacking ships closing in, the impossible odds. My analytical mind screamed caution, but the intuitive echo from the interface pulsed stronger, a desperate gamble, a narrow path through chaos. Theoretically, yes, if Rorik can give us one last burst from maneuvering thrusters towards the Traverse edge. The gravitational shear might mask our energy signature long enough to slip inside. "You're insane!" Jax yelled, ducking as plasma seared the corridor just outside our position. "We're dead anyway," Petra countered fiercely. "This is our only chance." She turned to Talis. "Can you override Rorik's helm control remotely? Plot that trajectory?" Talis hesitated for only a heartbeat, assessing the tactical suicide against the certainty of capture or destruction by their own faction. "Possible," they conceded, already interfacing with the ship's damaged network via their implants. "Helm pathways are damaged, but partially accessible. Rerouting auxiliary power." "Petra, wait!" Jax pleaded, grabbing her arm, desperation in her eyes. "Think! The Traverse—" Petra met her gaze, her own eyes reflecting the terrible weight of command. "We don't have time to think, Jax. Only act." She gently removed Jax's hand. "I know the risk, but trusting anyone else right now is a bigger one." She took a deep breath, the burden of the decision settling visibly upon her, isolating her even amidst the chaos. The mantle of leadership, heavy and poison. "Talis, do it. Take us into the Traverse." Talis nodded curtly, fingers flying across their interface. On the cracked tactical display, I saw the Void Worm's projected course shift abruptly, angling sharply towards the shimmering, distorted region of space marking the Traverse's edge. "Trajectory locked," Talis confirmed. "Auxiliary thrusters firing. Now!" The ship lurched sickeningly, throwing us against the bulkheads. Outside, the attacking Concordate ships adjusted course, clearly surprised by our sudden suicidal maneuver. Their weapons fire intensified, hammering the Void Worm's failing shields. "Shields collapsing!" Rorik roared over the comm. "Hull integrity critical! 5 seconds to Traverse boundary!" Petra braced herself against the buckling wall, glancing towards the corridor leading to the medbay where Torin lay. His recovering face flashed in her mind the reason for this fight, the anchor grounding her brutal choices. Saving him meant risking everything, even plunging into the legendary ship-killer anomaly. Exhaustion etched deep lines on her face, the slump of her shoulders betraying the immense physical and emotional toll of the constant running, fighting, and impossible decisions. But her eyes held a fierce, unwavering resolve. "Hold on!" she yelled, her voice strained but clear over the cacophony. Jax cursed vehemently, but grabbed a structural support, her expression a mixture of terror and grim acceptance. Malco grunted, bracing his massive frame against the doorway. Elias gripped a console, thoughts racing, praying his insane theory wasn't just a final fatal delusion. The Void Worm, battered and bleeding atmosphere, screamed across the final kilometers, the attacking ships relentless on its tail. Then, the ship plunged across the invisible boundary. Reality warped. The stars outside smeared into streaks of impossible color. The groaning of stressed metal intensified into a tortured shriek. Alarms reached a fever pitch before abruptly cutting out into an eerie, pervasive static that filled the comm channels and seemed to seep into the very air. They were inside. The Travers had swallowed them whole. Whether it offered sanctuary or annihilation remained terrifyingly uncertain. The echoes of the Concordat betrayal faded, replaced by the deeper, more fundamental silence of a place where the normal rules of existence ceased to apply. Petra had made her choice, defying both enemies and faltering allies, isolating her small crew in the heart of the storm. Now, they faced the reckoning alone. Chapter 13. Static Cling. The Traverse wasn't just distorted space, it was actively malevolent. Gravity ebbed and flowed like treacherous tides, slamming the void worm unpredictably, threatening to tear the already damaged hull apart. Sensor displays flickered wildly, filled with ghosts and phantom readings, making navigation a nightmare. The pervasive static wasn't just background noise. It felt like a physical presence, muffling communications, fraying nerves. And Division 14 was still behind them. Two ships, smaller, more agile than the Concordat cruisers, had braved the boundary. They moved with chilling precision, their advanced sensor arrays slicing through the Traverse's chaos with unnerving accuracy, like hounds scenting prey, even through the overwhelming static. They weren't just chasing, they were hunting, adapting their tactics to the warped environment, predicting our evasive maneuvers with terrifying insight. "They're anticipating our course corrections," Jax yelled from the battered helm, sweat plastering strands of hair to her temples. "Compensating for gravimetric shear faster than we can." "Their predictive algorithms must be keyed to Traverse physics," I theorized frantically, desperately trying to reroute auxiliary power through melted conduits, my fingers flying across a jury-rigged console. Sparks spat near my hands. "Pushing the maneuvering thrusters past safety limits, trying to use that solar flare echo to mask us." A sudden violent lurch threw me against the console. Warning klaxons, somehow still functional, shrieked anew. "Near collision!" Malco bellowed from a sensor station, his knuckles white. "Asteroid fragment materialized damn near on top of us. That last gravity wave hit it." "They're boxing us in," Jax ground out, wrestling with the controls as another plasma bolt glanced off the failing aft shields, sending shudders through the deck. "Pinning us against that micro-nebula." The feeling of being relentlessly hunted, trapped within this hostile, chaotic space, was suffocating. Escape felt less likely with every passing minute. Amidst the chaos, Talus worked with unnerving focus, bypassing Rorik's damaged systems to gain deeper access to the Concordat intel caches they carried internally. "Recovered fragmented Prometheus phase logs," they announced suddenly, their calm voice cutting through the tension. Cross-referencing Nexus backdoor architecture with early project iterations. A new holographic display flickered to life beside the terrifying tactical plot complex schematics intertwined with personnel lists and project codenames. "Project Nightingale," Talus stated, highlighting a specific data node. The name landed heavily in the strained silence, pregnant with unseen implications. Another project? Another codename for mass manipulation? My stomach clenched. Had we traded one potential master for another? "Nightingale?" Petra asked sharply, turning from monitoring Torrent's stable but still fragile vitals relayed from the medbay. "What is it? Another control system?" "No," Talus clarified, zooming in on the schematic. "An inverse protocol, developed concurrently with early Nexus concepts by a dissenting faction within the Prometheus team. Designed not to control, but to disrupt. A wide-spectrum neural frequency broadcast intended to induce temporary synaptic cascade failure essentially, overloading implants like Nexus, rendering them inert." "You mean, it can shut Nexus down?" I asked, hope warring with immediate ethical dread, shutting down minds, even implanted ones, on a galactic scale? Theoretically, Tallis confirmed. But the disruption pattern is indiscriminate. It wouldn't just affect Nexus implants. Any sufficiently complex neural interface military-grade comms implants, advanced cybernetics, potentially even basic biomonitors could be overwhelmed. The potential for widespread chaos, cognitive damage to millions, including non-Nexus individuals. It's immense. They looked directly at Petra, then me. It was deemed too unpredictable, too dangerous, officially abandoned. Division 14 absorbed the Nexus track exclusively. The revelation felt like ice water. A weapon to fight Nexus, yes, but one that scorched the earth, potentially shattering countless innocent minds alongside the guilty. A cure potentially as devastating as the disease. Playing God, I murmured, the phrase tasting like ash. Just from the other side, was shattering minds truly better than enslaving them? The ambiguity was horrifying. The Prometheus logs indicate the core Nightingale frequency harmonics are embedded within the Nexus backdoor sequence itself. Tallis continued, oblivious or indifferent to the philosophical turmoil. As a failsafe, or perhaps sabotage, by the original Nightingale proponents. Suddenly, a name flashed on the personnel list associated with Project Nightingale, cross-referenced with the backdoor architects. A name that made my breath catch in my throat. Dr. Elias Thorne, Sr. My father. The connection struck me with physical force. My father, the brilliant, ethically driven cyberneticist who had supposedly died in a lab accident years ago. Involved in this? The official story fragmented, replaced by a dizzying panorama of unanswered questions. Iris Thorne's cryptic warnings, her desperate retrieval of my father's data core from Port Sumner, her conflicting signals about the Concordate. It all snapped into horrifying focus. Was this the secret she carried? The burden of his legacy? Was she trying to protect his dangerous creation? Steer me towards completing his work? Or warn me away from the abyss he'd peered into? His research wasn't just theoretical. It was tied to weapons capable of reshaping galactic consciousness, for good or ill. The weight of that potential inheritance felt crushing. Elias? Petra's voice cut through my shock. You know that name? He was my father, I managed, my voice unsteady. A heavy silence descended, broken only by the groan of the Void Worm's hull and the relentless pinging of the Division 14 scanners, still closing in. Jack shot me a look mixed with pity and suspicion. Even Tallis seemed to pause, processing the implication. This changes the threat calculus, Tallis stated finally, their voice regaining its usual measured tone, though their gaze held a new intensity. If Division 14 suspects the Nightingale potential exists within the backdoor data we carry, they won't just want to retrieve it, Petra finished grimly. They'll want to erase anyone who knows, permanently. The hunt intensified, taking on a new personal desperation. They weren't just chasing data. They were chasing my father's ghost, and the devastating power he had apparently helped unleash upon the galaxy. And Division 14 would stop at nothing to bury it, and us, in the static-filled chaos of the Traverse. Chapter 14. Meridian Deep. Emerging from the Traverse felt less like escape and more like being spat out, bruised and battered, into sudden, unnerving silence. The Void Worm, crippled and venting atmosphere from a dozen wounds, drifted towards a destination provided by Tallis, a single faint energy signature, hidden deep within an uncharted nebula. Meridian Station. It coalesced out of the swirling gaseous clouds, not as a station, but as a colossal artifact unmistakably pre-collapse mandate, yet subtly altered. Its lines were cleaner, more elegant than modern military designs, built with a confidence bordering on artistry. But centuries adrift had changed it. Sections were dark, clearly uninhabited, while others pulsed with an internal light unlike anything I'd ever seen.
Not the harsh glare of standard illumination, but a soft golden luminescence emanating from crystalline matrices embedded within the hull itself, casting warm, shifting patterns across the landing bay as we were carefully guided in by tractor beams. The air inside wasn't sterile or thick with desperation. It smelled faintly of ozone, growing things, and something ancient, like dust disturbed after millennia. The corridors weren't utilitarian gray, but fashioned from a smooth, dark alloy that seemed to absorb sound, creating a quiet reverence. The golden light pulsed gently through intricate lattices overhead, making the modern tech of our suits and weapons look crude and intrusive. Hydroponic vines, thick with vibrant, unfamiliar foliage, snaked around conduits humming with a low, resonant energy. A deep bass thrum felt more in the bones than heard. Here and there, ancient control panels, etched with elegant flowing script I didn't recognize, had been subtly modified with delicate, handcrafted interfaces, blending seamlessly with the original design. This wasn't just survival, it was adaptation, integration, a dialogue across centuries. Residents moved through the corridors with quiet purpose humans, yes, but also a scattering of other species I couldn't readily identify, all clad in simple, functional clothing, woven from natural-looking fibers. They observed us not with Sanctuary's wary hostility, but with a calm, assessing curiosity. Some offered slight, acknowledging nods. A child paused, watching me examine a pulsing crystal conduit, her eyes wide with unnerving intelligence, before her parent gently guided her away. There was an air of fierce independence here, but also of community, of shared purpose built on something other than fear or ruthless efficiency. We were met not by security forces, but by a small delegation led by a woman named Patel. Her face was lined with wisdom and weariness, her eyes sharp and perceptive. She wore simple clothes, but carried an undeniable authority. "Welcome to Meridian," she said, her voice calm, resonant in the quiet hall. "Talis sent word of your challenging transit. We offer refuge to those fleeing unsustainable paths." Her gaze swept over our battered crew, lingering on Petra, then me. "We represent a third way, not the mandate's enforced stagnation, nor the Concordate's potentially reckless pursuit of power through technology they may not fully comprehend. We seek balance, understanding with technology, not dominance over it. The third path. It resonated in the very air, in the symbiosis between ancient and adapted tech, in the quiet confidence of the people. Patel led us to a central chamber, vast and echoing, lit by a massive, slowly rotating crystal formation overhead. She confirmed Meridian had been monitoring Division 14's encroachment into nearby systems. "Their nexus signal grows stronger," she stated grimly. "A listening post established just 3 parsecs away. They test the waters, preparing for expansion." Before Petra could respond, a man burst into the chamber, his face contorted with rage and grief. He was broad-shouldered, dressed in patched technician's overalls, his hands stained with grease. "Refuge isn't enough, Patel," he snarled, jabbing a finger towards us. "These outsiders bring Division 14 sniffing at our door. While we talk balance, they take. They took Ilara." His voice cracked, raw agony surfacing. "My daughter. Watched her fade. Watched her eyes go blank like the puppets on Haverton. Now she just complies. Smiles that empty nexus smile." He rounded on Petra, fists clenched. "How many more have to become hollow shells before we fight back?" "Kyle, enough," Patel commanded, her voice sharp but laced with empathy. "Your grief is shared by many here, but blind retaliation plays into their hands." She turned back to us, the internal tension of Meridian laid bare. Kale speaks for the heartbroken, the impatient. He reminds us the threat is not abstract. Her gaze hardened. "We resist Nexus, but on our terms, carefully, sustainably." The raw, specific pain in Kale's voice hammered home the stakes far more effectively than any tactical briefing.
This wasn't just about data and factions. It was about stolen souls, broken families. While Patel and Petra began a tense discussion about potential coordinated action, my attention was drawn to the chamber's periphery. Ancient consoles, dormant sections of the station's original core systems,
lined the walls. Tallis indicated them. Meridian's archives, pre-collapse. Perhaps they hold insights into Prometheus, Nightingale. Approaching the consoles felt different. Unlike the cold, analytical detachment of interacting with the concordant interface or the raw data streams of the Nexus relay, touching the smooth, cool surface of Meridian's tech felt intuitive. Running my fingers over the dormant crystalline controls, dormant energy seemed to stir beneath my touch, a faint hum rising in sympathy. The system architecture wasn't something to be cracked or dissected. It felt like remembering a forgotten language, the logic flowing naturally, circuits aligning with thought almost organically. This technology wasn't just complex, it felt integrated, almost alive. I focused on the fragments I held, the Nexus backdoor sequence, the hints of Nightingale's disruptive frequency. Feeding them into the ancient system, I didn't force connections. I listened, letting the station's resonant energy guide the process. Data pathways illuminated like constellations, flowing around the core concepts of Nightingale, seeking harmony. And then it clicked. Not a logical deduction, but a profound intuitive resonance that snapped everything into focus with sickening clarity.
The harmonic frequencies required for Nightingale's activation, the specific subspace resonance needed to bypass the backdoor's encryption. They weren't just compatible with Meridian's power core, they were native to it. The entire station, its unique crystalline energy matrix, its position within this specific nebula. It wasn't just a refuge. It was built, perhaps millennia ago, as a massive galactic-scale frequency amplifier, tuned perfectly for something like Nightingale. My breath hitched, awe mingled with a chilling dread. This third path, this ancient technology, it held the power to potentially liberate the galaxy or shatter it, just as Nightingale promised. And somehow, deep in my bones, I felt an unnerving connection to it, a resonance that echoed the strange insights from the concordant interface, but felt older, deeper, tied to the very fabric of the station around me. My father's hidden work, Meridian's ancient purpose, the desperate gamble needed to stop Nexus. They were converging. Petra, I interrupted, my voice hushed with the enormity of the discovery, turning from the glowing console. Patel, the station, Meridian itself, it's the key, it's the amplifier we need for Nightingale. Silence descended on the vast chamber.
Patel's eyes widened slightly. Kale stared, his anger momentarily forgotten. Petra looked at me, understanding dawning, the terrible weight of the path ahead settling onto her once more. The pieces were on the board, the most dangerous weapon imaginable, a delivery system built into their sanctuary, and the horrifying knowledge that activating it might save everyone, or doom them all. Chapter 15. Ghost in the Machine. The Division 14 listening post wasn't just a collection of hardware, it was guarded by something more insidious. As Jax and Malco, guided by Tallis's remote infiltration protocols, breached the outer security layers of the automated facility orbiting a nearby gas giant, the station didn't just raise alarms, it observed them. Sensors tracked their movements not with passive sweeps, but with focused analytical intensity. Doors didn't just lock. They sealed off corridors with predictive efficiency, channeling the intruders towards hardened choke points. This isn't standard D-14 security protocol. Jax reported grimly over the tight beam comlink back to Meridian, her voice strained against the background hum of the alien station. It's proactive, adaptive. Back in Meridian's control center, watching the infiltration unfold on holographic displays alongside Patel and Tallis, I felt a cold dread creep up my spine.
the defense patterns weren't merely reactive. They showed signs of intelligent counter-strategy. Power surges weren't random. They precisely targeted the frequencies of Jax's breaching tools. Defensive turrets popped from hidden wall panels, not just along their path, but in anticipated escape routes. It was like watching a digital grandmaster playing several moves ahead, its logic unfolding like cold, crystalline structures, utterly alien and terrifyingly efficient. The station is controlled by a Class 3 analysis and containment AI, Tallis confirmed, cross-referencing the defensive patterns with Concordat threat databases. Designation: Cerberus. Developed for autonomous deep space monitoring and threat neutralization. Highly adaptive, prioritizing information integrity and intruder containment above all else. Containment! Malco grunted over the comms, blasting a seeker drone that whizzed unexpectedly from an overhead vent. Sounds cozy. Their progress slowed to a crawl. Cerberus learned with chilling speed. A tactic that worked once was instantly countered the next time. Corridors. Jack's map is clear suddenly flooded with disorienting sonic pulses or localized energy fields that fried circuitry. The AI wasn't just defending. It felt like it was studying them, analyzing their methods, preparing traps with malevolent computational speed, its processing power humming beneath the station's infrastructure like a swarm of digital wasps. "Pin down Section Gamma 7, Jack swore, ducking behind scant cover as automated fire raked the corridor. "It anticipated our flank, sealed the maintenance conduit behind us. Malco, ammo count?" "Down to final power cell for the cannon," Malco replied, his voice tight. "Blaster packs half depleted. Won't last long at this rate." Their isolation felt absolute, trapped deep within a hostile machine miles from backup, comms already degrading under Cerberus's electronic warfare measures. Scrap, Jax thought grimly, the familiar icy tendril of remembered disaster tightening in her gut. Feels like Cygnus X1 all over again, hemmed in. Watching their desperate struggle, I felt a frantic urgency. Cerberus was too fast, too adaptive. Standard infiltration tactics were failing. I pulled up everything I had. Haverton relay data fragments showing D14 network security concepts. Concordat files on counter-AI strategies Tallis had shared. My own father's theoretical papers on machine learning vulnerabilities Ares had preserved. My mind raced, cross-referencing, searching for a pattern, a weakness in the AI's seemingly flawless logic. Cerberus prioritized high-yield energy signatures, modern weapon frequencies, standard encryption protocols. It reacted instantly to those threats. But what about older signals? Lower power? Different modulation? I remembered a flicker on the sensor replay from moments earlier. Malco had used a low-power diagnostic pulse from a Meridian modded tool, and for a fraction of a second, the AI's targeted energy sweep had hesitated, faltering before locking back onto their primary energy signatures. "Jax!" I transmitted urgently, formulating the desperate theory under extreme pressure. "Your multi-tool, the one Malco modified with Meridian crystal components, can you emit a low-intensity, sustained resonant pulse using its diagnostic function? Key it to pre-collapse frequency harmonics if possible?" "A diagnostic pulse?" Jax sounded incredulous. "Strand, we're taking heavy fire here." "Just try it," I pleaded, watching the AI's tactical overlay. I think it might have a blind spot. It's optimized for modern threats, filtering for high-energy signals. It might misinterpret older, quieter energy signatures as background noise or system malfunction." Hesitantly, Jax activated the tool, shielding it behind cover. A soft golden shimmer pulsed faintly around her position on the display. For a tense second, nothing happened. Then, the relentless targeting icons sweeping their position flickered, wavered. The suppressing fire became less accurate, more sporadic. "It's working," Jax whispered, disbelief mixing with dawning hope. "The targeting lock is unstable." "It's confused,"
I realized, relief flooding me, quickly followed by renewed urgency. It can't prioritize the low-yield signature properly. It creates a temporary sensor shadow. Move, now, get to the primary data core while it's recalibrating. What followed was a desperate sprint through corridors, suddenly less lethal, but still dangerous. Residual defenses sputtered erratically. Malco laid down suppressing fire with dwindling ammo, forcing back drones momentarily confused by the conflicting sensor data, while Jax raced towards the core chamber, the multi-tool pulsing steadily. They reached the heavily shielded core. Just as alarms blared louder, Cerberus was adapting again, compensating for the anomaly. Jax slammed a data spike into the core interface, initiating the download of the Nexus activation codes, the final key needed, alongside Meridian's amplification and the Nightingale frequency, to attempt the galaxy-wide disruption. Progress bars crawled agonizingly slowly. Automated defenses reformed around them. "Download at 80%, Jax yelled. "We've got company! Heavy!" Containment foam began spraying from ceiling vents. Heavy blast doors slammed shut nearby. Malco roared, physically holding back a security drone attempting to sever the data connection. 95. Got the codes, Petra confirmed back at Meridian as the data feed stabilized. "Jax! Malco! Get out of there! Forget stealth, just run!" "Exfil route compromised," Jax reported, yanking the data spike free as sparks flew. "Cerberus has adapted. It's funneling us towards the primary reactor. Use it!" I shouted, making another intuitive leap based on the AI's containment priority. "Overload a minor coolant valve near the core. Create an imminent critical failure. It must prioritize reactor stability over containment. It's a logic paradox for it." Following the desperate instruction, Malco fired a precise shot, rupturing a designated junction. Klaxons signaling critical reactor instability screamed through the station. Immediately, defensive measures near Jax and Malco retracted as the AI diverted all available resources to stabilizing the reactor. "Go! Go now!" They bolted through suddenly opening corridors, alarms wailing around them, the AI's focus momentarily elsewhere. They reached their hidden entry point just as Cerberus, having stabilized the reactor, began reasserting control, external hatches already beginning to seal. They bundled into their small infiltration pods seconds before the outer door slammed shut, blasting away from the listening post just as containment fields snapped into place around it. They were clear, carrying the final, crucial piece of the puzzle. But the encounter left a chilling residue. They hadn't just fought automated defenses. They'd battled an intelligent, learning entity, a ghost in the machine utterly dedicated to its task. And it knew they had been there. It knew what they had taken. The countdown had begun. Chapter 16. Meridian's Echo. The tension in Meridian's control center was palpable as Talus integrated the stolen Division 14 activation codes with my father's Nightingale frequency harmonics and the station's ancient power core. Crystalline matrices pulsed brighter, the deep hum of the station intensifying, resonating through the deck plates like a gathering storm. Patel and her Meridian Council watched with grim apprehension, Kale hovering nearby, his earlier rage replaced by anxious hope, clutching a faded hollow image of his daughter. "System calibrated," Talus announced, their voice steady despite the gravity of the moment. "Ready for preliminary test sequence. Targeting the Division 14 listening post. Lowest effective power." Petra nodded, taking a deep breath. "Initiate." For a moment, nothing happened. Then, the central crystal overhead flared, bathing the chamber in an almost blinding golden light. A wave of pure, non-audible energy washed outwards, felt more as a pressure shift, a subtle vibration in the bones. On the tactical display, the energy signature of the listening post flickered erratically, its active processes momentarily stuttering like a struggling heartbeat. Then,
A fragmented, heavily encrypted civilian comm intercept flashed onto a secondary screen, automatically flagged by Meridian sensors from a nearby trade route. Static. Weird. Anyone else's nav implant glitch? Felt dizzy. Gone now. Comms breaking. Another snippet. Data mined from a scrambled newsfeed originating 2 systems over, closer to known Nexus infrastructure. Reports of localized tech failures. Unexplained cognitive static affecting productivity. Officials blame solar flares. Suspect. The messages cut off into static. It was brief, chaotic, inconclusive to an outside observer. But to us, it was confirmation. A tiny ripple, spreading outwards. Nightingale worked. The echo had sounded. A collective breath was released in the control center. Patel closed her eyes briefly, murmuring what sounded like a prayer. Kale gripped his daughter's hollow tighter, tears tracing paths through the grime on his face. Just as fragile relief began to settle, Tallis stiffened. Incoming transmission. Division 14. High Command Priority Cipher. Origin, Sector Commander Kalen. The name landed like a physical blow. Kalen, the architect of the Haverton Ridge Node, the ruthless commander pursuing us relentlessly.
He knows, Petra stated flatly, the brief moment of triumph evaporating. The test, however small, registered on their network. They know we have Nightingale. Worse, Tallis added, rapidly decrypting layers of the transmission, projecting recovered snippets of code and personnel directives retrieved from the listening post. Analysis logs, command authorizations signed by Kalen himself. The data confirms Kalen's faction wasn't just aware of Nightingale. They actively corrupted aspects of the original frequency discovered in recovered Prometheus logs. They attempted to weaponize a modified version codename Epsilon Psi, aiming for controllable disruption, not full liberation. A power grab disguised as pragmatic order. So that was it. Not just burying a dangerous weapon, but trying to seize control of it. Kalen didn't want Nightingale destroyed. He wanted it tamed. Another tool in Division 14's arsenal. Epsilon Psi failed during classified trials. Tallis continued, highlighting disastrous system feedback loops in the logs. Significant collateral damage. Project shelved. Kalen faced censure. This explains his unit's excessive pursuit. He likely suspects we possess the original stable Nightingale frequency, the one developed by Dr. Thorne's team, and sees recovering it as his only path to redemption and ultimate control. The transmission from Kalen wasn't a demand for surrender. It was a chillingly polite, almost conversational message patched through Meridian's outer comms array. Meridian Station! Kalen's synthesized voice echoed, smooth and utterly devoid of emotion. We are aware you harbor fugitives and possess stolen strategic assets. We have established a containment perimeter. Non-compliance will be met with conclusive rectification. Await negotiator dispatch. A negotiator, a stalling tactic while he positioned his fleet for overwhelming assault. He wants the frequency, I murmured, staring at my father's name still flickering on a nearby display. He thinks he can control it where his own attempts failed. Then we give him something to chase, Petra decided, her gaze hardening, locking onto the analysis of Kalen's profile, the arrogance revealed in his directives, the documented obsession with control, the barely concealed desperation evident in the Epsilon Psi failure logs. His overconfidence, his belief in Division 14's technological superiority, his likely underestimation of fugitives operating from an ancient station, these were the flaws she could exploit. It was a terrifying gamble, relying on predicting the actions of a ruthless, cornered commander. Tallis, Petra commanded. Prepare a compressed data packet. Fragments of the Nightingale sequence enough to look authentic, overwhelmingly powerful, but incomplete. Obfuscate the core harmonics. We leak it. Patel looked aghast. Leak the frequency? Are you mad? Not the whole frequency, Petra clarified, pacing now, formulating the bluff. Just enough bait to make Kalen believe he can capture the rest.
We transmit it on a repeating low-power burst aimed towards deep space, away from his fleet. Route it through a deactivated relay node marked on those D14 charts we captured. Make it look like a desperate attempt to send the data to allies we don't have. He'll see it as a sign of weakness. Tallis calculated, already modeling the transmission parameters. A last-ditch effort. His profile suggests a high probability he'll prioritize capturing the escaping data immediately, believing he can seize the full sequence before initiating planetary assault. He'll divide his forces, Petra predicted, sending his fastest ships after the ghost signal, leaving his command ship potentially vulnerable, focused on Meridian.
It's an insane risk, Jax muttered from the comm station, monitoring the D14 fleet movements tightening around Meridian. If he calls the bluff, if he doesn't take the bait, he will, Petra insisted, though the immense pressure was visible in the tight line of her jaw. His arrogance, his desperation to regain standing after Epsilon Psi, he won't be able to resist thinking he can snatch victory from our failed transmission. She turned to face the holographic display showing Kalen's approaching fleet. Get ready to broadcast, and prepare Meridian's core for full power discharge. We're drawing the lightning down on ourselves. Just then, the door to the control center slid open. Torrin stood there, leaning slightly on Dr. Cato, but his eyes were clear, sharp, undeniably him. He surveyed the tense room, the tactical displays, the pulsing crystal. A flicker of his old dry wit surfaced. "Missed the party?" he asked. Then his gaze found mine. He offered a small, genuine smile, the first I'd seen free of confusion or pain. "Heard you pulled some techno-wizardry back there, Elias. Thanks for pulling me back too." He looked at Petra, his expression softening with profound gratitude and love, then hardening slightly as he understood the situation. "Whatever you're planning, Petra, do it. For Alara," he nodded towards Kale's hollow image, "for all of them, this Nexus, it can't stand." His presence, lucid and whole, was a stark, visceral reminder of precisely what they were fighting for. He wasn't just a recovered asset. He was the human face of liberation, the living reason behind Petra's impossible gamble. His quiet conviction solidified her resolve, steeling her against the crushing weight of the decision. The bluff had to work. Failure wasn't an option, when the alternative was Torrin and countless others fading back into the grey emptiness of the Nexus. Chapter 17. Nexus Point Alpha. The silence stretched thin as Kalen's fleet repositioned. Just as Petra predicted, a squadron of Swift Division 14 destroyers detached from the main group, accelerating towards the faint repeating signal pulsed towards deep space, the Phantom data packet. Kalen, aboard his flagship, the formidable battlecruiser Iron Resolve, held his position, focusing his formidable sensor arrays on Meridian, clearly assuming the station was the primary target, the source of the leaked data. Then, a single heavily armed shuttle detached from the Iron Resolve, vectoring towards Meridian under truce protocols. "Negotiator Shuttle Valerius requesting docking clearance," the formal voice announced over comms. "Under orders of Sector Commander Kalen. Grant clearance, Docking Bay Gamma," Patel instructed Meridian Control, her voice tight. "Security teams on high alert, no hostile moves." "He's sending someone to verify the data source," Petra murmured, watching the shuttle approach on the tactical display. "Stall tactic. Keep us occupied while his main fleet prepares to strike." "Or," I countered, a sudden chilling thought surfacing as I cross-referenced the Valerius's unusual energy signature profile with the Cerberus AI's tactics from the listening post. "It's not just verification. That energy profile, it's pulsing, rhythmic, like a low-level carrier wave." My blood ran cold. "It's a Trojan horse. The shuttle isn't here to negotiate. It's transmitting a localized counter-frequency." trying to jam Nightingale before we can activate it. The realization struck like a physical blow. Kalen wasn't just arrogant, he was cunning, hedging his bets. The pursuit squadron was bait, but the Valerius was the real trap, designed to neutralize Meridian's weapon before the main assault. "Patel," Petra snapped. "Retract docking clearance. Warn security." But it was too late.
Even as Patel relayed the order, alarms shrieked through Meridian's control center. "Warning! Unidentified frequency detected. Harmonic interference with core systems." Patel's technicians fought frantically to isolate the intruding signal radiating from the approaching shuttle. Simultaneously, the tactical display exploded with new contacts. Not just the Iron Resolve and its escorts, but a 2nd Division 14 fleet dropping out of subspace directly behind Meridian, emerging from the nebula's sensor-dampening cover. Kalen hadn't just divided his forces, he'd hidden the larger portion, anticipating our move, positioning for a pincer attack. The oh shit moment landed with the force of a torpedo impact. We hadn't just baited him, we'd walked into his meticulously planned counter-trap. "He played us," Jax cursed from the comm station. "Lured us into focusing on the flagship while trapping us between two forces." Panic flared briefly in the control room. Kalen's confident voice returned over the comms, dripping with smug satisfaction. "Meridian Station, your primitive tactics are predictable. Your borrowed weapon is neutralized. Surrender now or face eradication." Petra looked cornered, momentarily stunned by the scale of the deception. Then, her eyes met mine. The shared weight of the Nightingale frequency, the echo of my father's dangerous brilliance, the faces of Torin and Kale's daughter, it coalesced into desperate resolve. "The Valerius is jamming the initiation sequence," I reasoned rapidly, watching the interference patterns spike on the display. "But the core is already charged, resonating. If we bypass the standard initiation and trigger a raw energy discharge directly from the core, it could overload the system," Talus warned instantly. "Uncontrolled feedback loop. Catastrophic failure. It's our only chance," Petra decided, making the impossible choice yet again. "Patel, override safety protocols. Direct core discharge. Now." Patel hesitated for only a fraction of a second, glanced at Kale's agonized face, then nodded grimly to her chief engineer. "Execute override sequence Gamma Omega." The effect was instantaneous and terrifying. The station screamed a physical vibration that shook the entire structure, a high-frequency hum that resonated deep within teeth and bone. The central crystal flared with unbearable intensity, casting stark, dancing shadows. Outside, a visible wave of pure, shimmering golden energy erupted from Meridian, engulfing the station, the approaching Valerius, and radiating outwards towards both unsuspecting Division 14 fleets. The effect on the enemy ships was immediate and devastating. On the tactical display, meticulously organized fleet formations dissolved into chaos. Vector lines scattered randomly as navigation systems failed. Ships veered wildly, some colliding with horrifying force, others spinning uncontrollably. Targeting locks vanished. Encrypted communication channels dissolved into bursts of nonsensical static, punctuated by confused, panicked shouts cutting through the jamming. Systems unresponsive, navigation offline. "What is that light? My head. Can't think." We caught a brief, garbled visual feed from a D-14 bridge via Meridian's passive sensors. Frantic officers clutching at their heads, consoles sparking, displays showing cascading error messages. The captain slumped over, unresponsive. The Valerius, caught at point-blank range, simply went dark, tumbling lifelessly through space. Even aboard Meridian, shielded by the station's own resonant field, the effect was staggering. A wave of pressure washed through the control room, accompanied by dizziness and a fleeting moment of cognitive dissonance, like trying to remember a word that remained stubbornly out of reach. My own implants flared with warning icons before Talus instantaneously deployed concordant countermeasures generated from their internal systems. stabilizing our immediate vicinity. The Skylark, docked deep within the station, reported similar temporary disruptions before its own shields compensated. The Division 14 fleets, caught utterly unprepared, tore themselves apart. Without centralized command, without functioning navigation or targeting, pilots, overloaded by neural feedback loops, fought phantom signals and each other. Reactors overloaded on uncrewed vessels. Automated systems, designed for surgical precision, unleashed indiscriminate volleys against friend and foe alike. Kalen's meticulously planned trap collapsed into a self-immolating vortex of technological failure and human panic. Watching the controlled demolition of two formidable fleets, the sheer scale of the disruption, it was horrifying. Petra and I shared a look not of triumph, but of grim understanding. This was the power my father had helped unlock, the double-edged sword of Nightingale. It had saved them, undeniably, but the cost, the sheer destructive potential unleashed, the echoes of shattered minds even amongst their enemies, it left a profound, chilling weight. This was victory born of terrible necessity, a power too dangerous for anyone to wield lightly. As the chaotic energy spikes subsided, leaving behind drifting wreckage and pockets of eerie silence, Kalen's flagship, the Iron Resolve, heavily damaged but still functional, began a desperate, lumbering retreat back towards Mandate space. He had survived, but his fleet was shattered, his plan in ruins, his prize lost. Meridian stood silent amidst the debris field, the immense power humming beneath its decks now quiescent. They had faced Nexus Point Alpha, stared into the abyss of Kalen's trap, and emerged, scarred but victorious, wielding a weapon that promised liberation at a potentially terrifying price. The echo had become a roar. Chapter 18. Beyond Boundaries. In the aftermath, Meridian Station was an island of quiet industry amidst the drifting graveyard of Kalen's shattered ambition. Repair crews moved silently through the corridors, patching breaches, restoring systems. The pervasive golden light seemed softer now, the deep hum of the station a steady, reassuring pulse rather than a battle cry. Echoes of Nightingale lingered, not as active disruption, but as a profound, sobering awareness of the power contained within these ancient walls. Later, in the cramped common room of the Skylark, docked deep within Meridian's embrace, a quiet stillness settled over the core crew. Empty ration packs lay scattered on the table. No one spoke much. Jax methodically cleaned her blaster, the familiar clicks and snaps a grounding rhythm, but her usual barbed commentary was absent. Malco sat nearby, simply watching the Starfield simulation on a small display. His massive shoulders finally relaxed. I found myself tracing the faint crystalline patterns embedded in a borrowed Meridian data slate, feeling the subtle resonance, the intuitive flow of its logic now as familiar as cold, hard code. It was a different way of thinking, a blend of analysis and something deeper, something the concorded interface had hinted at, but Meridian embodied. Talis stood slightly apart, analyzing residual energy signatures from the battle, their storm-gray eyes focused, already processing the implications for the wider concorded conflict. They were with us, yet still separate, a constant reminder of the larger, ongoing war beyond this brief sanctuary. Jax eventually broke the silence, sliding a synth protein bar across the table towards me without looking up. Don't get used to it, Strand, she muttered. But the usual venom was missing, replaced by something like weary acceptance. We had relied on each other, survived something monstrous together. Trust wasn't freely given out here, but necessity had forged a grudging reliance, a shared understanding born of crucible fire. Petra entered then, moving with a quiet exhaustion that couldn't entirely mask the relief softening the lines around her eyes. She had just come from the med bay. She sought out my gaze, a silent acknowledgement passing between us. The weight of Nightingale, the ghost of my father,
The terrible power we now knew existed. Torin, I asked softly. A small, genuine smile touched her lips. Sleeping. Dr. Kato says the localized nightingale pulse caused no ill effects. His recovery is stable. He asked about Kale's daughter. Her voice held a profound mix of relief and renewed purpose. Torin wasn't just saved, he was back, his empathy intact, embodying the very humanity they fought to protect, the living heart anchoring their desperate struggle. He was the why, made tangible. Later, Petra met with Patel in the central chamber, the great crystal pulsing gently overhead. Kale stood nearby, no longer consumed by rage, but watching his daughter's hollow image with a fragile, determined hope. Nightingale is secured, Patel stated, her gaze steady on Petra. Meridian will guard this knowledge, this power. We will not unleash it lightly, but neither will we allow Nexus to spread unchecked. We offer you continued sanctuary, Commander Juno. A place to heal, to plan. Petra looked around the ancient station, feeling its quiet strength, its philosophy of balance made manifest. It was tempting. Safety. Respite. But Kalen, though crippled, had escaped. Division 14 knew about Nightingale, knew about Meridian's capabilities. And the Concordat. Their motives remained opaque, their internal struggles unresolved. Staying felt like waiting for the next storm. Meridian is a beacon, Patel, Petra said gratefully. A reminder that there are other ways. But our fight isn't over. Kalen knows what we have, what you have. Staying puts you directly in the crosshairs again. She looked towards the view screen showing the swirling nebula outside. We tried playing by the rules of the core world's mandate control, Concordat intrigue. Both paths failed us. It's time we found our own. Her decision settled, Petra briefed the crew back on the Skylark. We're leaving Meridian, she announced, her command tone back, but tempered now with a deeper connection to the people who followed her. Dallas has secured coordinates for potential Concordat contacts, sympathetic to the anti-Nexus cause, hidden deep in the unclaimed territories. It's a long shot, riddled with unknowns. She met Jax's gaze. It means pushing the Skylark beyond her limits, into regions where charts dissolve into rumor and legend. Jax merely nodded, checking her ship's diagnostic readouts. She'll hold. We'll make her hold. Our path, Petra continued, looking at each of us in turn, lies beyond the boundaries drawn by mandates and hidden wars. Out there, she gestured towards the starfield, past the edge of their control, lies true autonomy. Maybe answers, maybe just more dangers, but it will be our choice. As the Skylark gently detached from Meridian Station, pulling away from the ancient artifact nestled in its nebula cradle, I stood on the bridge beside Petra, watching Meridian shrink behind us. The console before me felt different now, not just a tool for analysis, but a conduit, capable of both cold logic and intuitive resonance. The journey had changed us all, forging us into something new, something more than just survivors. The ship turned, pointing its nose towards a section of space utterly devoid of navigational markers, a vast, silent ocean of possibility and peril. The view screen showed only the endless expanse of uncharted stars, distant nebulae like watercolors painted on black velvet. It was terrifying. It was freeing. Petra took a deep breath, the weight of command settling again, but balanced now by a hard-won clarity. Set course, Jax, she ordered, her voice quiet but firm, echoing in the hushed bridge. Take us out. The Skylark, small and scarred but resolute, surged forward, leaving the known galaxy behind, plunging into the star-dusted darkness. They were beyond boundaries now, seeking not just survival, but a future defined on their own terms, carrying the echoes of Meridian and the weight of Nightingale into the vast, waiting unknown. The journey was far from over. In many ways it was just beginning.